What's going on, man?
Hey
Doing all right?
now. Absolutely.
I
How you
like this new
doing?
time. This is great.
Yeah, this is cozy.
Jeez, my goodness.
Halenville live on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Welcome. We are sitting in our new time slot, um, our new permanent time slot. So, yeah. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a long day.
Pretty
Ready to
good.
talk a little Van Halen. We got a new book here, you guys.
Ooh,
My
ooh.
goodness.
Yes, we do.
Michael is cool. He's really cool, and he knows a
Yeah.
lot about what he wrote about. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So this book, Van Halen, the Eruption and the Aftershock, is due out October the 1st. And Michael is waiting backstage and he's going to tell us all about it.
Actually, yeah, he'll tell us it was due out October 1st, but it's been pushed back to
Yeah.
October 6th. So we're going to get
Oh,
into
it
that.
has been.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to get into
Okay.
that with Michael. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
cool.
So let's
And it's not for the reason that you think it's
For a
the
good reason.
obvious reason for October 6th. It's not. That's not the reason. It's actually a good reason. So
right.
Well, look
All
forward to
right.
it. Cool.
Let's meet him, ladies and gentlemen. Here he is, Michael Christopher.
Guys, what's up?
Mike, what's going on, man?
How's it going, man?
Good to you.
All right.
Nice.
Michael, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Love you guys.
Yeah, dude. Welcome.
I like the fact you got the wings and the rings behind you there.
You got to have
Yeah,
both.
right.
That's it. I agree.
Very cool.
You got to find the, pardon the pun. I'm sure there'll be a couple of them tonight, but pardon the balance.
There you go.
Aha.
Perfect.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
All right.
So, Michael, first off, let's. We were just talking about it a second ago. So, the book was supposed to be out October 1st, but it was pushed back to October 6th, but not for the reason that everybody thinks. We all know October 6th would be the first anniversary of Eddie's passing, but that's not the reason why the book was pushed back. So, tell us why.
Yeah, I don't think that the people in the publishing warehouse have any idea about that, and that's on them. That's their own deficiencies in life. But the reason it was pushed back is because the first printing completely sold out pre-sales.
That's great.
That's so cool.
Vendors, through Amazon, through all the different outlets you can pick up the book. So they're scrambling to get a second printing done already, it's great news. I'm sad it's been pushed back, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to it coming out on the 1st. Unfortunately, it's going to be a couple more days. They're going to have to wait.
That's a good thing, though. That's not a
Yeah.
It's for a good reason. It's
Absolutely.
it's good stuff.
And it just goes
Absolutely.
to show that people are hungry for Van Halen material. I mean, there's, obviously a few books coming out, but there's room for all of these books, and the true Van Halen fans will have all of them. So
Oh, yeah.
this is a great thing. They're going to want a bookshelf full of Eddie Van Halen.
So much info, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I want all the books. I want them all.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? And each of these books are going to be, take a different approach too. I'm sure they're, they're going to focus on different facets of Eddie and his life and things like that too. So, which is great because that's, it's all good for the fans of Eddie. So, so tell us a little about yourself. You're a writer. Was it Vanyaland?
Vanyaland, yeah. That kind of sprung out of the ashes of the Boston Phoenix, which is a weekly up here in Boston where I live. It was a very renowned alt weekly, and the music editor there, he decided that he was going to launch not a replacement, but sort of an extension of what was going on at the Phoenix. And he asked me if I'd be one of the founding writers, and I went along with that and did that for a number of years. I'm still doing that. They're going strong, vanyaland.com. But I also write for Ultimate Classic Rock. I've done a lot for Loudwire. Down in the Philadelphia area, I've got a syndicated newspaper column that runs every Friday and Thursday. So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but it's my main focus is rock and roll. As you can kind of see behind me, I mean, it's a lot of rock and roll. So.
And
Oh yeah.
And obviously, you're a journalist by trade. You went to Temple and studied journalism there.
Yes, this is true. Temple University, go Owls. Majored in communications, minored in journalism, and that's it. Yeah, put me in the path to where I am today.
So is this your first book?
No, this is my second book. My first book published last year. It was called Depeche Mode: All That's Left to Know About the World's Finest Synth Pop Band, and that was. You look at Van Halen, you look at Depeche Mode, that's really kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. But I'm all over the place with my music and the love of music that I have. And I was approached by a publisher who had read an article or a series of articles I had done on Depeche Mode and asked if I'd be interested in doing a book. Had to do the outline and go through that whole thing. And that came out late last year. Another book that was delayed, but for different reasons. Obviously, we had the pandemic. So yeah, this is my second one that's coming out now.
Very cool.
Nice.
So guys, before we get into the book right now, let's say hello to everybody in the chat. Tony, you want to?
Yeah. Let's see who we got. Brendan B. Squared, Sandra, lovely Sandra.
Brenda,
is
Sandra.
moderating in the chat. Tim Thomas.
Tim, what's up, bro?
Who else did I see? Keith Campbell.
Keith, how you, bro?
Lenny Lou and Mary
Lenny
are
and
here.
Mary.
Hello, ladies.
Hey,
Guys,
what's up?
good to see you guys.
Smy Tree is here. Welcome, Christopher Live Sala.
Christopher, bro.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thomas Santiago.
Thomas.
If you're lurking, say hello. Welcome, everybody. Yeah.
Very cool.
And there is your link to this book. And it is also, all the links are down below in the description. You can find them at various places. And all those links are down there. Yeah.
So Michael's book is called Van Halen, the Eruption, and the Aftershock. And so Michael, so tell us a little bit about the origins of the book. I mean, obviously you're a big Van Halen fan, and when did you start thinking about writing this book? Is it after Eddie's passing? Was it before?
No, it's funny because I've been working on this off and on for a couple of years without any clear kind of knowing where it was going to go. A chapter here, a sketch of something there. And whenever I did an interview with a musician or a comedian, an actor, whoever, I always asked about Van Halen. It would be at the end of the interview and I would just bring it up. And 9 times out of 10, they were excited to talk about Van Halen. I mean, who doesn't like Van Halen? And I'd file that away thinking I might use it at some point because I maybe one day would write a book. And mainly after Eddie passed, the news cycle kind of moved on. Media outlets, radio, everybody was ready to start talking about something else. Obviously not us, not the hardcore, not the fans, but the main media outlets were, and I wasn't. And I approached my publisher and I said, look, I've been working on this kind of behind the scenes. It's not, I can't, what they had asked actually was, could you deliver a manuscript in 3 weeks? I said, no, it's not that. It's not that developed. I mean, it's developed and it's a lot in my brain, but it's not there. But they said, I said, look, I brought up this book before about Van Halen. You guys were kind of wishy-washy on it. Now it's time. And I mean, the impetus was, especially now, was for a few reasons. I wanted to tell the story of Van Halen now that it had an end point. And as sad as that is, it's true. We're never going to be able to see them in concert again. Never going to get to look forward to a new studio album. And so rarely writing books of this nature, do you have that option? Either it's a complete retrospective, pick any band that hasn't been active for decades, like the Beatles or something like that, or it's an unfinished story in progress. I mean, we talked about my last book on Depeche Mode. That was kind of tricky to wrap up because there's still an existing entity that's moving forward. Mm-hmm. And with the Eruption and the Aftershock, it ends with the passing of Eddie Van Halen, just as the band did. It doesn't go into Wolfgang's solo career, Dave's solo gigs, or the Circle, or anything like that. Dave opening up for Kiss. It's none of that. It stops with Van Halen. And at the end of the day, personally, two of my favorite things to do in life are to write and to talk about Van Halen. So I combine them. I mean, to be able to mix those two together is an absolute joy. I mean, writing about my favorite band, I mean, come on, that's a blast.
Yeah, you could probably write a few books about them, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
Right. So I completely agree with you. I thought that I don't feel like Eddie was given enough attention. Maybe it's just me because I was kind of offended by the media not making a bigger deal out of Eddie's passing, and I was even saying I was mad at Eric Clapton, people like that. It's like these guys should be all saying something about this guy. Was everybody says, oh, Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. Hendrix, those are the two guys. Well, some guys were classy, like Pete Townsend and people like that, and made great statements about Eddie and Jimmy Page and people like that. But there were a lot more people who should have, I thought, publicly made a statement about him and his passing and what he meant to the 20th century music in the 20th century, and millions of people worldwide.
John, I agree with you 100%. I kind of felt the same way. A totally different level, totally different style of music. But when Lane Staley died from Alice in Chains, I remember that on MTV, it got barely a mention, but it was right around that same week almost that the girl from TLC had died. And they interrupted programming, and they it was almost like when Kurt Cobain passed. If people were old enough to remember when MTV completely restructured the programming around that.
Right.
But they barely mentioned Lane Staley, and I'm like, this is one of the top 3 or 4 voices of grunge, and they're barely mentioning it on the channel that kind of pimped them out as much as they could when they were still viable, and then they didn't do anything with it. But with Eddie, it was, you mentioned somebody like Eric Clapton. It's not like these guys were busy when it happened. I mean, COVID was in full swing. Nobody's touring. If you're in a studio working on music, you're still not doing anything else. If you're even doing that, I would have liked to have seen a lot more. We know that there's the Grammy debacle, but there's so many more musicians, I think, especially legacy artists like a Clapton, should have said something. And that, I think that says more about them than it does about Eddie, of course.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about that. I had a whole list of people like Paul McCartney, people like that. They said they should have made a statement about him. And as far as the Grammys go, I've actually come around a little bit on that because I do think that they reached out, and I don't think Wolfgang really. I think he could have worked with them, to do something a little more. I think he kind of left everything just hanging up in the air. And I think it was my understanding from speaking to somebody that they were willing to do something, but that he didn't really, I guess, for whatever reason, it could have been more than we got that night. But, so
I think it would have been cool if maybe he came out and, that whole thing with him doing Eruption is just
stupid.
The dumbest thing of all time. But if they had him come out and just say something maybe and present, I don't know, a collage of Eddie's greatest hits or something, and give it like a good 5 minutes. This is somebody who revolutionized guitar. For decades and decades to come. And you just do, I get what they did and they tried, but and I've said this before about Grammys and whoever else, try harder, keep going back. Maybe they should have tried a little bit harder and presented some different options. And whether they did or didn't, or maybe once they presented the Wolfgang, can you do Eruption, he just completely shut down on it. We'll never know. Or maybe we'll,
but bottom line is they had one shot and they did blow it. It was, for whatever reasons they blew it. But so I'm glad to hear that you kind of felt the same way as I did, and I'm sure all of us did. I just felt that it would last longer. The story, about his passing would be, more newsworthy than they actually led. Some of the, the Today Show led with it in the morning and Good Morning America, which was kind of cool. It was in the opening, but I just thought it would have lasted longer. But you know what? This is the times that we're in. Everything is like, 24-hour news cycle, and it's gone at that point,
Yeah,
But,
once it's off the main page of TMZ, it just drops and drops and drops, and then it's, whatever else story, whatever other Desperate Housewives did at an airport somewhere, that becomes the big story. It's a game, but that's the climate we're in these days.
So when did you become a Van Halen fan? How old were you, and what's the first tour you saw and things like that?
I was really, really young when I became a fan. I grew up in my grandparents' place, and I had all these uncles and aunts that were only a few years older than me. And the youngest uncle was, I think he's maybe 6, 7 years older than me. He introduced me to Women and Children First. And that just blew my mind. I mean, look at, you got the drum beats on Everybody Wants Some. Any little kid I might as well have been watching Tarzan or something, the way Dave's screaming on that. And it blew my mind. And of course, Dave says, he says, fuck at the end of one of the songs. And it's like, we can say fuck, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this is so taboo. And then I hear something like Fair Warning, which is just, the guitar on that is otherworldly. Or you have something like Sunday Afternoon in the Park, which is like, what the hell is this? I mean, this is completely different than anything any other band's doing. You're not hearing this on an Eagles record, No. So I was just locked in at such a young age. And I think I might have been maybe the only 3 or 4 year old on my block that had a Van Halen iron-on t-shirt.
Wow.
But I didn't see them for the first time until the Balance tour in Philadelphia. And it was just kind of one of those circumstances where I didn't see them until that. And then it was every single tour, multiple dates after that.
So,
Yeah.
that's what tends to happen, right? You see them and you just like, then you get hooked and you got to go see every possible show, right? So now with the book, where did you begin? Like the book, where does it start? But we know where it ends. But did you start from when they were children? Take us through a little bit of like the how the book how it runs through his life and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the book it's a start to end book. I mean, it's and one of the ways that I approached it was there's going to be people that aren't going to know a lot of the stuff that are casual fans. So you're going to have somebody who's just getting into Van Halen, and of course you're going to have, guess what? Eddie played drums, Alex played guitar, and then they switched. I mean, we know how played out that story is, but it's part of the story of Van Halen. Right. But I wanted, and obviously we know the Van Halen Rising, and Greg Renoff's book is from the early days until the first album is the Bible of Van Halen. And he's one of the guys I interviewed for the book. And I didn't want to touch too much on that. I mean, I wanted to focus on everybody's background a little bit, dedicate a chapter to their beginnings, dedicate a chapter to them getting together as a band, and then kind of get things moving. Because if you want anything earlier than that, and kudos to Greg Renoff, I mean, he did such a great job on that. But then it goes through every aspect of the group. And I feel like it treats them all equally, especially the Gary era. I know a lot of people like to look over that. There was another book that I'm not going to name it, but I was looking for some of the Gary stuff, and I was finding almost nothing in it. It's not one of the new books. Yeah,
it's a hugely important era in the band, and Eddie, and musically where he was at and where he was going, and it had major implications on the future of the band after that too, as we know. Yeah. What like these? You said you're talking about these other books that are out. What differentiates your book from the other books that are out or coming out or things like that over the next few weeks? There's a few books coming out.
I think especially with the ones that are coming out now, and I really want to make this clear, and this is one of the parts that stinks about it coming out on October 6th. This is not a book about Eddie. It's not about any one period. It's the story of Van Halen, the band.
So that's important. That's very important right, exactly.
And that's why I wanted to do the title, The Eruption and the Aftershock. And I'm sorry I couldn't fit Gary's. I tried to put like year to the day in there somewhere.
Right.
It wasn't working, but I feel like that crystallizes both primary errors of the group.
Well, Michael, hold on. Let me interrupt you. You are getting a year to the day in there. You are actually getting a year to the day in there when you think about it. In another way, you are.
That's good. Yes. Yeah. So I inadvertently got Gary Sharon in there, and I did not even plan on it.
That's kind of wild.
That is wild, yeah.
Wow.
Good on you for pointing that out. That's crazy.
Yep. That's cool.
But yeah, so yeah, I think it crystallizes both the primary errors of the group, which became a cover art nightmare for the publisher, and we can get into that at some point if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it.
But right off the bat, that title is letting you know that it's all encompassing. And the other two books that you've got coming out, Eddie's on the cover. It's covering the life of Eddie Van Halen. I haven't read Paul's book yet. That's the one that's Unchained in the States, Eruption in the UK. But I've read the Brad and Chris one, which is phenomenal. If you want to hear these see these interviews with Eddie, get into the intricacies of the equipment, find out all about EVH gear, Brad and Chris's book is an excellent source for that, and so much more. This is a story about Van Halen, the band. It's not just a story, but it's also a celebration of those who toured with them, were influenced them, and who were going to be fans of them for the rest of their life, kind of like we are. Mm-hmm. And I talked to fans for the book, but I also talked to a lot of heavy duty musicians, I think. And I want to get into that.
I definitely want to get into that a little bit more. But now going back to the cover of the book, talk a little bit about that, why it was so difficult with the publisher and things.
Oh man. So, all right. Well, here's the thing so you see the cover, it's got everybody who was in the band. Here's the thing. If you take a look at almost any book on rock and roll, not just Van Halen.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks. Go ahead.
Not just on Van Halen. 9 times out of 10, there's one photo on the cover. And the reason why is because not only do you have to pay to license photos, but you have to pay an exorbitant amount more to put a photo on the cover. It doesn't matter if the shot is black and white, big or small. All the photographer hears is, I'm going to use your shot for the cover. I can say it's going to be a tiny little postage stamp. It's going to be on the cover. Now, I played around with maybe using 2 shots, maybe one from the Sammy era, Dave era. You can't put just a shot of the Dave era and let people know it's going to be about all Van Halen.
Sure.
Can't do just the Sammy era. And I didn't want to do an Eddie one to lead people to believe it's a book about Eddie. So I started thinking there's 4 touring and recording iterations of the band. I need to get them all on there. And I could, before I even picked up the phone, I could hear the collective groan from the publisher, like, there's no way we're going to pay for 7 cover shots.
Wow.
You can't do that.
Yeah, so how'd you pull that off?
Well, I had to get creative. I mean, one of those ways was to use a couple of my own photos on the book, which is a lot of people are going to, or already have actually. I've got messages about it. I saw it on one of the message boards. Why is that picture of Gary from Extreme? Which it's not actually from Extreme. It's when he was touring with the Joe Perry Project a couple years ago. And the story behind that is I took it and it didn't cost anything to use. And
nothing wrong with that.
No,
exactly. The same with the Wolfgang one. I took that. It didn't take anything else. I mean, I'm a budding, very mediocre photographer. Sometimes I get a photo pass at a show. I take pictures, and some of them are good enough to do something with.
That's cool.
But
that's awesome, actually. That's
so
very cool.
Super
yeah,
cool.
and I actually have a great one of Eddie but it's in the book. It's from the 2015 tour where, and this is just a complete aside, but he came right up to me on the 2015 tour at a photo pass and got right down to my face and gave me a thumbs up. And I'm like, I don't even know how I clicked it because I'm like, like I froze, but I got it. And when I got home that night, I'm like, please let that be on the camera. Please let that be on the camera. And it was on there.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's in the book. It's such a great shot. I love it.
That's good. I can't wait to see that one. Then that's great.
So long story short is money.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? It did cross my mind because I looked at those photos on there and I go, how do you pull this one off? Because you got to pay for each of those photos. Somebody's getting money, you know what I mean? Somebody's getting money out of that.
Again,
But
it's so much more expensive than in the book. I mean, some of the photographers that are represented on the cover, they're in the book as well. Like in the actual, there's 2 separate sections for photos.
Right.
I think they're both 16-page spreads. And I think the cost was 3 times more for the cover ones than it was for the interiors. And it's like, I get it. I mean, but yeah, but you get it, but it sucks. It sucks. Yeah, exactly.
Hey Zach, hey Dan.
What's up, Dan?
So you know, what are there? I'm sure there are, but are there some things that we don't know about Van Halen in this book? You think there are some things that are going to surprise some people? Nuggets?
Yeah. I think so.
You don't have to tell us, you know.
No, I won't give you the exacts, but I mean, it's like that's why I brought up the Alex on guitar and Eddie on drums because everybody knows that, and especially us hardcore fans, it's like, all right, we've heard that story a billion times. But I think that if that's why if you're somebody just getting into Van Halen or you're a hardcore fan like all of us, I guarantee that there's something in the book that you're going to discover that you didn't know. I mean, it's that earlier part is it's something we all know, but it's part of the story of Van Halen. You kind of have to tell it. But there's so much more that as I researched, I peeled back layer by layer to get a full picture of the band. And in doing that, there's a lot of nuggets. I mean, I learned a lot of new stuff going into it, into the research that this isn't stuff I've been sitting on for years. Like, I can't wait to tell people about this. But over my years of research, I remember thinking, wow, this would be good for a book one day if I bring this up. And I thought, especially going into the final, making it a book this past year, I'd have to square up some dates. Like, we know Balance came out January 1995. So what was the exact date? I got to check that out. Maybe some tour openers, line up some specific timelines. But it seemed like with every new album, the more research I did, the more I was finding something new. And that's what we've lived on for years as Van Halen fans, tidbits here and there. But when you put them all together, it starts to make some sense. You're like, oh, that's why this happened. It wasn't just some spur of the moment thing. It kind of blossomed from that and became what everybody else knew. And I know that's a little bit cryptic, but it's definitely worth it.
Now, did you get any kind of? I mean, I don't know if you approached anybody close to the band or anything like that. Did you get any was there a wall put up and things like that? Did they know?
Yeah. Who'd you interview? Anybody?
Yeah. So wow, there was. It was really interesting when before the book was even going to happen, for sure. I was going to interview Wolfgang for one of my outlets. It wasn't anyone in particular, but I had been in touch with the publicist, and they said, okay, after the single came out, we're going to wait a little bit, wait until the next year. All right, wait until the new year. Wait until the tour is announced. Well, the tour is announced. Wait until the record comes out. The record comes out. And finally, I'm like, what's happening with this interview? I mean, I see Wolfgang doing interviews all over the place. And a lot of places aren't even fans of Van Halen, or, they're not fans of Wolfgang. They're just doing it for clickbait, doing whatever they can. And I said, look, man, I'm not only am I a fan, but I'm writing a book on Van Halen. And the reply I got back was, you don't think we know you're writing a book? That's one of the reasons why
We're not
we don't
talking.
want you to interview Wolfgang right now. And I said, whoa. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, the book's in the can, the book's getting published. And so, oh, so you can just add an interview with Wolfgang and make it a bonus chapter. And I'm like, wow. Like, I never thought of that, would never think of that. Think not only as a writer would it be a horrible thing to do for my own reputation, but as a fan, so underhanded and just so shitty to do. But they really close ranks really quickly when anything is being done to publicize somebody else's project. I know that one of the books that got, when it got announced, Wolfgang tweeted about it, said it was keyword unauthorized, and it's tough. He also mentioned that book was a cash grab, and I'm like, I wish I had that guy's publisher, because I'm not making any cash on this. I mean, I still got to go back to my regular writing to do this. I'm not, even though that first printing sold out, I'm not making a ton of money on this. You know, you're
a labor of love for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, and I don't know about the other authors, I know about me. I do know, Brad's a big fan of Van Halen. I know Chris is a huge fan of Van Halen. This is a passion project for me. I mean, I didn't just put those things up in the back just because I'm going to be doing these shows. This is something I walk into every day in my office.
Right.
There you go.
This is stuff I
Cool.
love. But yeah, you got a little bit of closing of the ranks with the Van Halen thing. But you can see that people want to exploit it for what they can. I'm sure they've been approached with a ton of merchandising requests. You see all the bootleg swag that's out there.
Yeah, right.
It's tough. And I know a lot of people think, especially Wolfgang, he thinks it's way too early. Don't do this now. But my thinking, and I mentioned this earlier, not just as a fan, but as a writer, it felt too soon for me that people were moving on from it. I want to keep Eddie in the public consciousness, and it's in our consciousness because we're hardcore fans.
Right.
I want to keep it in the public consciousness.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the perfect way that you put it right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and like you said, we understand Wolfgang does think it's too soon, but at the same time, we want the name to live on. We want him to live on. We want people to know about it. We want kids that are growing up to go buy a Van Halen record or pick up a guitar or something like that. Or if they go into a music store and see a Wolfgang, an EVH guitar, you want them to know who he is, who the EVH was. You know what I mean? So, that's pretty cool. So, how many people did you interview for the book?
Exclusively for the book, there was quite a few. I'd say at least 24. And now this is just exclusively for the book. And among them were like Stephen Piercy from Rat, who
he had a long history. Yeah, he had a long history with Van Halen and Eddie for years, right?
It was funny because one of the things he was telling me was, when I first met them, Dave was all like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And he's like, "Yeah, I want to go over and talk to this guy who has all this really cool gear." At the time, he was playing guitar and singing for Mickey Rat, and he was such a gearhead that all he wanted to do was talk about gear with Eddie and like the amps and the pedals and this and that.
Right.
So it was really cool to get that perspective. William Duvall from Alice in Chains, Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, Matt Storm from Velvet Revolver, which was, I really wanted to get someone from Velvet Revolver because I wanted to know what the hell happened at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like, that was such an abomination.
Yeah.
That I needed to ask somebody that was involved in it, why was it such an abomination?
Yeah.
And I didn't say, hey, you guys did a great job. I'm like, why did that suck so bad? I mean, I really needed to know.
Right.
And other people I knew who were fans, like Michael Sweet from Stryper, Phil Anselmo from Pantera and Down.
Cool.
I mentioned Greg Renoff, Sass Jordan, who was one of the people.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
That's
that's
that weird history. Did she get asked to join? Did she try out? What was that whole story? Nina Blackwood, one of the original MTV DJs, who she spent so much time with Dave and Eddie and just promoting them on the channel. It was really good to get her perspective from that sort of 80s era of the band. Yeah, so that's just a couple of the names that was just for the book. But there's others that you're going to find that are exclusive to the book. There's unpublished interviews with Sammy, Mike, Gary. These are interviews segments of it haven't been published anywhere else.
Very cool.
Nice.
Sebastian
Very cool.
Bach, who was asked to try out for Van Halen at one point. I kind of got his perspective. And one of the really funny ones was John Taffer. If anybody watches
Bar Rescue.
Wow.
he was partnered up with Sammy for a little bit. They were going to do a Cabo Wabo, I think it was Cabo, New Orleans.
Huh.
And he'd gotten pretty close to Sammy, and he gave me some really good insight into the 2004 reunion tour. Which, yeah, it's some pretty fun stuff.
Taffer was a big guy in that LA scene. Charles, you probably crossed paths with him.
I don't think people realize on the show they downplay. I mean, that guy.
He was a drummer, wasn't he?
Hundreds of millions, but it's because his business acumen for buying businesses failing like that and just turning them around, and in up and coming areas of cities is like.
But back in the day, he was part of the music scene. I think he was a drummer.
Yeah. Well, he told me a couple of things he told me. One was he ran the Troubadour for a little while, and I think this might have been after Dave was out of Van Halen, but Dave came by quite a bit, and he told me a couple stories that he said this has to be off the record.
Yeah, he was running it around 86, I believe. About 86.
Right. So that makes sense. That lines up. And then he was also a big time drummer. And when I talked to him, it was around the height of Bar Rescue, which is still going on. So him. But I said, what's your day like? What do you normally do? And he's like, I'm sitting in my office in Vegas, and I got this drum kit in my office. And it's an Alex Van Halen replica drum kit. And when I get really frustrated, I just go over and I bang out some shit for an hour. And I get all sweaty. And all I can think of is him in his blazer being like, like hanging out hot for teacher or something.
And he's not a small guy. So
he's huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's wild.
So, and what about, like, did you speak to fans and things like that for the book too? For any experience, for fan experiences or anything like that?
Yeah, there was. I did this for the Depeche Mode book just to get a little bit of insight on what that band meant to them, and I thought that's a whole different genre and whatever. But Van Halen fans are passionate. When you have passionate Van Halen fans, they're super, super passionate. And I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, fans are what makes the band go round. It's their, or our, should I say, devotion. I mean, we buy the albums. We bought the tickets to the shows, hung the posters on our walls as kids. We buy these books. And I thought, let's take a topic that everyone has an opinion on, which is, of course, which frontman do they like better? I know it's Beat to the Ground, and I know that everybody can, some people want to stay away from it. Some people want to get into it. But to me, it was, I wanted to talk to ones that were super passionate about it, not just, you go on any Facebook group or message board, and I wanted to say, rather than Sammy's fat and Dave is bald, or Sammy can't write lyrics and Dave can't sing, I wanted to know why, other than just the one you don't like sucks. Why? Why do you like your guy, and why don't you like the other guy? So I gave a whole chapter just to that. I mean, it's not a huge part of the book. It's not it, but I wanted to give fans a voice and say why. Not just, I didn't want to have Joe from Detroit says Sammy sucks. Why don't you like Sammy, or why do you? It was, for the most part, it was positive. It was And I got some really interesting stories. I mean, actually some heartfelt stories from people that one guy who like Dave's lyrics helped him overcome a speech impediment. And I'm like, this is stuff you don't hear in a group where you're like, F Sammy, you know, whatever. It's like this is why I like Dave. And you know, I got to thank him in person for helping me with this. And it's like, wow. And these are some really cool things.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I still don't get, you know, people that hate this one, hate the other one. It's like, especially in the state that rock music is in now. And it's just like, you know, how can you're a Dave fan, you hate Sammy? You know, it's all, my view is it's all Eddie. So, you know, and he wrote all the music. So I really don't, you know, to me, it's all Eddie. So I don't care. I like it all. I want more. I don't care, whatever.
So the cover of the book, that's why I wanted to, it's again, not being a book about Eddie. I wanted Eddie to be the one that's in color. But there's no Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen.
No, it has.
Said that. Yeah. Wolfgang said that. And I mean, it's not that the other guys are peripheral, but that's what the band is. It doesn't exist. It doesn't supersede what any other band has done in rock music if there's not Eddie Van Halen. That's and right. To me, as a fan, I've done the whole, I'll ask people, or I used to go out when it was before the whole Gary thing, I'd ask people, Dave or Sammy, just to get an answer from, again, people I was interviewing. But to me, it's all Van Halen. I mean, I love it all. I mean, look behind me. I'm not sitting here Dave or Grave, with how people are, and I get it, but another part of me doesn't get it. It's like
it's a whole story that all parts are equally important.
Yeah,
it's true. Absolutely.
Can't have one without the other, and
and that's why you can't negate the Gary Cherone era. It's it's not only a part of Van Halen, it's a huge part of Eddie Van Halen.
Oh yeah, sure.
I actually think it was, you know, the way the band is broken up into the different eras. I think a lot of it has to do with Eddie's growth too. I think that, you know, by 1984, I always say they imploded. They were burned so hot they imploded. But I think it's also that Eddie went, you know, as far as he could at that time with Dave, and I think that, you know, he didn't want to repeat himself, and so in one way, it had to happen. You know what I mean? And for him to, because he was able to express himself differently with stuff with Sammy, obviously with the keyboards, and you know the direction he was going there. And I also think that ran its course after about 10 years, and that's why the Gary Cherone era is so important. You know, some people don't think so, but Gary was, you know, important in that, you know, Ed wasn't a singer, and Gary's lyrics were he's got some pretty good lyrics and stuff, you know, like that. Dave had great lyrics too. Sammy's, obviously people complain about his lyrics, but I think that Eddie was excited about that, and he wanted to be a little more depth to him. He wanted to show a little more depth to his own music and his writing and things like that. And I think he needed that outlet with Cherone. That's where he was at the time. So, you know, people can complain about it, but there's one common thread through all of this stuff. It's all Eddie. And, you know, if you don't like the keyboard songs, like Sammy says, blame him. He wrote them. You know what I mean? That's what he gave me. And the same with Gary. If you didn't like the stuff on Van Halen 3, Gary was just doing what he asked of him. You know what I mean? What Eddie wanted. And Eddie was happy with that album when he was very happy when they were recording that record.
Yeah, so, Ed Roth almost came back right before then. So imagine that record, or imagine Dave and Eddie 96 and that music and its follow-up.
Yeah.
You know,
I really wonder how that would have turned out. I think about that a lot. I mean, probably more than any sane person should. I think about a lot. What if they had stayed together in 96 with Dave? Eddie was taking control of the band. I mean, that was clear. It's totally clear on Van Halen 3. And I don't think you do a whole album of songs with Dave if Eddie's in control of the band.
I'll be completely honest. I agree. I don't think Eddie wanted Dave back in the band. I don't, you know, listen, they would have made tons of money and all that stuff, but I think creatively he didn't want it. He
Yeah.
wanted to go in a different direction, and I don't think
and that was
he
his
felt
gut,
that Dave
and that's
could
what
help
happened.
him. Yeah, I don't think Dave could help him go where he wanted to go. Which, listen, we know it failed. It was Eddie's first major failure that era, but I don't think he really wanted Dave back in the bay. I think he wanted to go push forward somewhere different, and hope that
I agree.
the fans would come along with him for the ride.
Yeah, and unfortunately they didn't. I remember when that album came out with Gary, he was likening it to Fair Warning, saying how it's just got to grow on people. It's got to grow on people. And when hardcore fans heard that, they were like, this is blasphemy. Can't compare Van Halen 3 to Fair Warning, which is a masterpiece. But for him, it was just as much an artistic expression as 3 was.
Right.
It was what was going on in his heart and in his soul at that time. I mean, he was going through so much frustration in Fair Warning, frustration with people didn't want him to get married to Valerie Bertinelli. He was getting all this pushback, and he wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to be himself.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing with 3. When people hear it's like Fair Warning, they say, oh, that means we're going to hear Unchained on this. No, it means you're going to hear what's coming from Eddie's soul on this.
Right. And you know what? And I listened to 3, and I still like Van Halen 3. I like a lot of stuff that's on there, and some of the guitar work on there is it's incredible.
Phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
It really is. So, hey, Michael, we're going to take a sponsor break right now. I'm going to turn it back to Tony, and we're going to get our sponsors a shout out here, and then we're going to jump back in, and we'll talk a little bit more about Van Halen 3, and then we're going to get some questions from the chat and from everybody else here on the panel, and we'll keep it moving. All right.
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Tony.
All right. I'll be brief. Our buddy Neil Daly, Daly's Custom Designs. His links
Beautiful.
are down below.
Yeah, look at those beauties.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Brendan B. Squared handcrafts custom cigar box guitars.
Super cool, man.
Yeah, how cool are they? Awesome.
Super
Yes. Very nice. Look at those beauties. And his links are down below in the description. And for those of us with ink on the bod, ink the original essential tattoo care, high-grade formulas with organic ingredients to hydrate and protect environment and reef safe. Fight the fade. Take care of your tattoo. Yes. All right.
It's
I
actually
can testify ink works. It works very well, and it works on Van Halen tattoos especially well.
Yes.
cool.
It does.
Nice.
Tony, you got to show Michael your tattoo.
I got to see it.
There you go. Ready?
Hang on.
Oh, hot damn.
Got to solo yourself.
Can we get a full screen on that? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Love
got
it.
this in June, Michael.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not long. Yeah, all healed up.
You know, it's funny. I got mine last March. Not this past March, the March before that. And
Let's see it.
well, I'd have to do some gymnastics because it's down on my
Oh
leg.
Lord. Okay.
I'll tell you what it is though, because you guys will all know it. Everybody else will have to research it. You know Eddie's Star guitar?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got that little ghost alien skull and crossbones on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Very
what I
cool.
got.
Oh, that's
Very cool.
Yes,
That's
because it's
original.
such a weird thing. Like, not many people would know that, you know?
Only like a super fan knows it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And
exactly.
I got that on the opening. It would have been the anniversary, the opening date of, I think it would have been the Invasion tour. And yeah, so I made sure I got it at a certain point that was,
That's
apropos.
cool. That's really cool.
That is
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, if you check out my Instagram, you can see it. Mick Chrysalis. It's on there somewhere. But yeah, got that little guy. And unfortunately, as this is kind of the sad part about it. Before I got the tattoo, I reached out to Janie because I had a little bit of a relationship with her, obviously professionally, with publicizing all the Van Halen tours since 2007. And people who don't know, I mean, Janie is Eddie's wife. And I said, what's the story behind that? Can you ask Eddie? I mean, I'm not going to publicize it. I would just love to know what that little skull and crossbones was about. And she didn't get back to me. And I kind of found out why several months later, because obviously Ed wasn't doing too well.
I'm trying to find it on your Instagram here right now.
Yeah, to be from March of last year.
March of last year. I'm scrolling down, trying to see if I can find it.
Tony,
Yes.
1980, the best year. Right?
It is.
For me, it is.
While you had stepped away, Tommy, Michael had voiced how much he liked the women and children first.
No, I could hear, my son. I had to help my son real quick. So I was stretching my headphones, but my camera and my thing were there. They were muted, but I could hear from my phone.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I wasn't right here, but I heard as I was helping him. Yeah. I don't know. It's just I used to be a fair warning guy, like when I was younger, but it's just at some point it just hit me and just, man.
Which one? Women and
Women and
children
children first.
Yeah. It
And
took
ever
me a
since-
little while to get back into it because it was like, once I heard Fair Warning, I mean, Women and Children first got me into them. Then I hear Fair Warning and the insanity going on there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then I hear something like 1984. I mean, you've got something in between, obviously, but, 1984 was all over the place with MTV and radio. I mean, these are songs that you're not hearing at the time. You're not hearing Fair Warning songs or Women and Children First on the radio.
Exactly.
In 1984, you hear, oh yeah, that's it. That's my leg.
That's awesome. That's
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's all.
Nice.
But I've been I always pick songs to hyper focus, and then I can usually get it, and I know the exact amount of minutes or songs I can get it on the way to work every day. So I've been every day, I have a set tracks I listen to. So Girl Gone Bad every day on the way in once and on the way home once at least.
Nice.
And man, I'm just realizing how much Holdsworth is on 1984 influence.
Yeah, exactly.
Holdsworth influence. I'm like, wow.
I can listen to
that track
Road Games by Holdsworth and stuff like that. You can definitely tell Eddie was way into.
Oh, big time.
Crazy.
So, Michael, what's your favorite Van Halen song today?
Oof, man, I feel like it changes constantly.
Yeah, that's why I said today.
Like all of us. But today. It's funny. I know that Tom was talking when you brought up that picture, but I had a friend of mine after I got that, she didn't know Van Halen at all, really, other than me just rattling on about them all the time. And she said, "Why'd you get cave art on your leg?"
Cave art.
I'm like, I don't think we're going to talk anymore.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's going to come up to you one day and they're going to know what that is.
Oh, and that's
going to be pretty cool.
A female, and hopefully we get married.
There you go.
Have a Van Halen theme wedding.
Exactly, right?
So my favorite Van Halen song today,
Yeah.
man, I keep going back to Girl Gone Bad. I really, really love Girl Gone Bad.
That's me too.
Sure.
It's such a great, great song. I love the little history of it where they kind of debuted it at the US Festival. I love how it kind of sprung out of a Cream jam. I love Eddie's solo on that. It's just, it's to the point where it almost seems out of place on 1984 because it's so incredibly Eddie and Alex. I just love that song.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that one. I feel the same way.
Man. That's
Did you ever look at someone trying to quantize that tune?
Forget
the
it.
rhythm is all like the part like bum, bum, bum,
Yeah.
bum, bum, and he misses that one by like a quarter beat.
He does. Isn't that great that we noticed that?
So hard
Hey,
to
Jay.
replicate, but he just was off by a little. But it's John knows exactly what I'm saying. Like it's so hard
When they played that on the reunion tour, I legit lost my shit. I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe they're playing Girl Gone Bad right now, and I'm seeing it live
That's
with
so cool.
Dave, with Eddie playing it,
and he
with
was
Alex
in
playing
such
it.
good
Like,
line shape that he nailed it like it was 1979 or 1980 Eddie. Like it was no problem.
Yeah.
His chops were so good. They were so back.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I agree. I think that to me is the ultimate Van Halen song, because if I wanted to point to somebody, like that's the one I would point to. Say, you want to listen to Van Halen, listen to, aside from all the hits and stuff like that, the top, the popular hit songs, I go listen to that song. I go, because that's the Van Halen magic right there. See them jamming?
That's that swing, that Van Halen boogie. Like you were doing like some of that on the intro, John. Like that's that Van Halen swing, man. It's
him
nice
and Alex.
to see him do it on that tour too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to see them connect that way live on, I'm going back to the US Festival with Alex and Eddie, to see them connect live. Wow, it was amazing. And people didn't know that was going to be Girl Gone Bad. They didn't know. And it never became a hit. It was way, way darker than anything else that was on 1984. Maybe House of Pain was a bit darker. But people just didn't know what they were seeing. They were seeing not only brand new Van Halen, but a live connection between Alex and Eddie as they were creating something, which is, to me, so fascinating to see it in its infancy.
That's an excellent take, Michael. That really is.
I feel like Eddie and Alex, they because they were brothers and they played so much together throughout their lives. I almost feel like it was like they almost shared a brain. They could anticipate where the other one was going. And I always point out the endings of Van Halen songs, because they had the greatest intros and they had the greatest endings of songs, because it wasn't just like they would hold it. You know what I mean? They weren't, when they in unison, when they'd be ending a song, they wouldn't just like rush through the ending like that.
Yeah.
They would squeeze every like bam, and
listen to Me Wise Magic. The end of that with Alex's drumming and the way Eddie's kind of fading out his guitar, like he's doing like the kind of I don't know what you would call it, because I'm not a guitar guy. You probably would, if he's just kind of fading out his guitar, but Alex is just going crazy on the drums.
Right.
I mean, if you got your headphones on and you're listening to Alex on Me Wise Magic, it's insane. It's incredible.
He sounds like his drums are gonna blow up. I mean, they're like literally he's gonna burst ahead. They sound literally like the equivalent of Eddie's amp on 10. They sound like the drums are just gonna explode. Yeah.
Right.
It's intense.
I was so glad that on the later albums that they finally got the drums, because if I could complain at all about the first 4 albums, 3.5 really, I'll say maybe. It's the drum sound. I just never thought they ever captured Alex correctly. I mean, I thought on Fair Warning, it started to, I could hear that snare sound, that special snare sound that he had, the tone. It started to come through there. And then on Diver Down, you could really hear it. It was like developing. His voice was really prominent there. And then, 1984, you listen to I'll Wait, listen to that snare sound. It's right there. And, and finally, between 5150 and OU812, because the studio was so small, obviously, in 1984 they just got an incredible sound. I can't explain it. Obviously, it's the Simmons kick drums and the floor tom, and the rototoms, But that, I think those drums just they don't sound dated to this day to me, anyway. I think 5150, I do think the Simmons drums sound a bit dated nowadays, and OU812, because they were limited because of the studio, the space. I don't think the drums sound great, but when they put the new room on there and Foreign Lawful Carnal Knowledge and Balance and everything after that, I think that they finally did justice to Alex's drum sounds.
Yeah.
I agree with that, and it's one of the parts where it's not up for me to disagree, but it's one of the parts where I disagree with Sammy, where he said that after Alex got sober, he stopped being a risky drummer. He stopped taking risks. Whatever he said in the book.
I remember that. You're right.
I think OU812 definitely suffered from a not great production, first of all, not great drum sound.
Right.
But with Fuck, I mean, once they had that drum room built, it sounded, and they had Andy Johns too, which
exactly.
I mean, it just that drum sound is incredible, and the drum sound on Balance is great.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's really, really good there. So I don't buy what Sammy says there. Again, we can talk about production of 5150 and OU812 all night, but I really think that Alex, once he had that room to really let himself go and to get himself going, it sounded incredible.
I think they were finally happy with the drum sound.
When the drill opens up on Pound Cake, those drums from the beginning, I'm like,
right.
The first time I bought the album and came home, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you heard a drill, and you're like, wait a second, is this Home Improvement?
You hear the noise of him plugging in the cable. You know?
Oh yeah.
And then you hear that drill rev up, man.
It's just the connection between the two, Eddie and Alex. It is amazing because it's so evident on so many of the songs. And another instance is the end of Drop Dead Legs, where that outro wasn't even on the song. They just stopped the song, and they didn't. That was it. They stopped it, and then Don Landy happened to record them just jamming, and that actually fit perfectly on the end. That the outro, that jam, and it's just amazing how he just spliced it on there, and it wasn't even that wasn't even played that way live in the studio. They just
look at Growth. Look at how Growth just kind of ended. Women and children first, and the fact they started playing that live.
Yeah,
on was it the 2015 tour?
I think it was 2015. Yeah, they added it in there, right?
That's when Wolfgang is totally behind the scenes going.
Yeah.
Remember when you did this thing and being like, "What? People know that?" Yeah,
they actually did Growth toward the end of the show in the '84 tour, right before "Ain't Talking About Love."
Damn.
So right before they kick off "Ain't Talking About Love" on the '84 tour. Yeah.
Now, did they ever play? Did they ever play like Dirty Movies live? I don't think they ever did, right? Until 2015.
Ooh.
Right.
Never recall hearing that.
You hit me right in the field right there, brother.
Yeah, you got it.
81, 82, or 84, they did.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, like Drop Dead Legs and on 2015. I think they did that on purpose because they never had ever played it live. The Wolfgang wanted, I think he was trying to get as much as the catalog that had never been played live into the set, which was
as hard as I tried to not look at what was going to be the set list.
Right.
When they came out in Boston and opened with Light Up the Sky, I was like, who is building this set list? Like, what am I going to hear next?
Heavenly.
I hear Dirty Movies. And like,
yeah.
It's great because there's a video on YouTube of the sound check. I guess the first night of the tour, and obviously Dave didn't do the sound check, so it was just the three of them, and it's pretty good quality. So if you guys haven't heard it, it's so awesome. I actually burnt it onto a CD. I haven't. I still.
Is that good?
Is it video or audio?
I'm telling you, go search for it after the show tonight or something like that. It's just your Dirty Movies, just an instrumental version. It's just like it just sounds so cool.
Yeah.
So and Light Up the Sky, they do that on there, but you got to hear it. It's really awesome.
What's funny to me is, and a lot of people don't know this, and I didn't bring this up in the book because it's whatever, but we know the famous Hollywood Bowl show at the very end of the end of the night where Dave's, or was it Dance the Night Away, and Dave says this whole thing about some of the best summers I've had or spent with you. While he's talking and Eddie's just kind of riffing on his own, he goes into Humans Being.
Really?
It's so crazy to me.
Oh,
He just sits there and they're like riffing on whatever they're riffing on. and then Eddie just starts doing Humans Being riff, and I'm like,
I
He's playing
think I recall that.
Yeah.
I recall that.
Subtle.
Yeah. Yeah,
And Dave had no clue.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
David. Well, I love when Wolfgang got interviewed several months ago, and he was talking about how he had the set list laid out for when Dave first came to the studio, and Dave said, "What's Get Up?"
Yeah, right. Right. Exactly.
Tony, we got Brad Cook, 5150 show in the chat, and Mr. Jay Hammond, 7/8.
Yeah, Jay's
Going
here.
on,
Hey,
you guys?
Brad. Nice to
Yeah,
see you
Shout out
guys.
to my boy in school, Julian.
Good to see you guys, man.
Yeah. Hey,
Hey.
if you guys in the chat have any questions, just put them up there. We'll keep an eye on them, and we'll ask Michael some
Hey,
questions.
can I ask a question, Michael, right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Charles.
Hey, Michael, what is the number one thing you want the fans to get from this book? The one thing that's most important to you, the author.
Oh man, that's a great question.
Well, I didn't want to stretch you too hard, and you can take a minute.
No. Yeah, could I got a chair back. Can I take a nap for a second?
Bro, we got all night, brother. It's all good.
Honestly, I want them to know that. Look, I'm a writer by trade. All right, I'm not just trying to write this book to capitalize on Van Halen or do whatever. I'm a writer. I've written a book. I've got another book coming out soon after this, but this is my passion, and I want fans to be able to know that a book that's being written about Van Halen as a band is being written by a fan.
There you go.
And it's for the fans too. And I wanted to talk to people that I knew were fans of the band. Like that's why I wanted to interview the singer from Alice in Chains, the guitarist from Black Sabbath, the singer from Pantera. I knew these guys were fans, and I wanted to make it a celebration of Van Halen.
There you go.
And I want people to get that when they read the book. Like this isn't, of course, it's a story from A to B of what they were and what they did and all the soap opera in between, but who they influenced along the way and
There you go.
whose lives they've changed along the way,
Mhm.
including mine.
Yeah, they impacted quite a few people.
I would say so.
All of us.
They still are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Good answer, Michael.
Eddie remained pretty close friends with Tony Iommi for years and years. I think that was one of the people that he always kept in touch with over the years. I guess from early on, from the first tour there. And you got to interview Tony obviously for this. And
Yeah.
Did he tell you stories from back in the day or
Yeah, his thing was he wanted to tell me stories from back in the day, but he did tell me some private stuff about getting to see Eddie and Wolfgang when Black Sabbath came to Los Angeles and spending time with them backstage. And he told me, and this didn't make it into the book, but how much of a relationship he saw between Eddie and Wolfgang, and being like, man, they were just so close, and it was so amazing to see them together and to see that happiness that Eddie had. Because obviously he saw Eddie as a young ruffian, back in the days, back in 78, and then he sees Eddie now as this elder statesman. Our fans like to call him the Jedi looking with his his gray beard and his gray hair and everything, looking like Obi-Wan Kenobi. But he always had his love for his son, and to get to introduce Tony to him, and yeah, it was kind of a cool thing that he saw the growth from that year up until the present day.
Yeah, when you think about it, it's pretty amazing because we all probably thought when Eddie would talk about Wolfgang, he's great. Wait to hear how great he is, and like that. I was like, yeah, he's just a proud father. You know what I mean? Wow. But then when we finally did get to hear it, we were like, oh my God, he wasn't kidding. He's like really that good, So
yeah,
it's pretty amazing. The whole because when Wolfgang was in Van Halen, it was even on A Different Kind of Truth, sang the backup, sounded fine on there, but it's just like when his album came out, I think our jaws all dropped to the floor. We were like, "Oh my God!" Eddie was not lying about how talented.
Yes.
I don't
He was
think
not.
anybody was expecting that, especially, I mean, after Distance, it's like, okay, Distance, amazing song.
Right.
No denying. But then the drop the bomb like he did
Yeah.
is just like, whoa. I mean, it's not an album of pop songs, to be sure. I mean, this is hard rock, and
Yes,
this
it is.
is him playing every instrument on the record. I mean, he's not joking around. He's not
And it's
bringing
great,
second
too.
guys and saying, "I'm going to sing some stuff, guys. Is that okay with you?" He's kicking ass all over the place.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I almost wish, you know, that the album was released while Eddie was still alive, because it would have been nice for him to see, you know,
Yeah.
the success that it had. But
Oh, yeah.
for obvious
It's good to know that. It's good to know that Eddie at least heard it.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it makes me think, man, and it sucks that all those people were like, you're just delaying stuff because it probably sucks and you're not putting it. And Wolfgang said so many times, if you only knew what was going on, you know, why it was delayed. And
I do think, you know, Wolfgang on social media, I mean, he focuses on the people who are negative towards him, but I do believe that the positive people outweigh those negative people 10 to 1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think people say, "Oh, why are they picking on him? They picking on him." It's not. It's just the small percentage of people that are doing that. But he, you know what? And we all say, "Oh, why is he going back at them? It's just stupid." But you know what? He has fun doing it, and that's what he says. I enjoy doing it. So you know what? Have at it. Have a good time. But I just think, you know, for anybody who doesn't pay close attention, the majority of the people are very supportive of him and what he does and his band and his music, and, you know, and will follow him for, you know, every album he puts out, you know, and tour.
have you guys caught him live at all?
I did. And Tony was with me on my phone. I had Tony live on there.
It was
we
good.
are actually going next Wednesday.
Yes, we are.
Michael, Charles, and me and others are going here in Raleigh. Yeah.
Is that a solo show he's doing, or is
No, that's a Guns Day.
Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, so I caught him with Guns at Fenway Park.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that was fun. And again, it was people that were, you didn't have negative people. You didn't have people, nobody's screaming out Panama at the show.
Right.
I mean, they're very supportive. And
that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's good stuff. You know, and of course, there's a lot of people wearing Van Halen shirts, and as you're going to do. But it's a rock show. Last night I saw Alice Cooper and Ace Frehley. People wore Van Halen shirts. That's what you do at a rock show. You wear a rock shirt. I mean, it's what happens.
That's right.
Yeah. Michael, so I know you are excited about this book. We have the links posted. Where can we find this book at?
You can find it. First of all, I got to give my props to Jeff in the Van Halen store. I love Jeff. I don't love him so much because he won't give me a discount on all the stuff I buy from the Van Halen store. I have so many things in the next room that I bought from there.
We all want that discount, yeah.
Yeah, give me a discount. Jeff, if you're watching, please. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and honestly, anywhere you get books is where you can find Van Halen, the Eruption, the Aftershock.
Excellent.
Excellent. And I do, you know, I did want to share something that I didn't put in the book, and it's mainly because it just didn't really fit with the narrative that I was doing. And if you guys will allow me to tell it.
Oh, hey, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So I mean, I tried to put about just everything I found out about Van Halen into the book. And there was one thing that came up. I was talking to William Duvall, who's now the singer of Alice in Chains, and I've known him for a while. He and I go way back. And I'm trying to remember this because, again, it's not in the book, but I interviewed him for it. And he was at a show. I don't know if it was one of the Alice in Chains shows or what, but it was in Los Angeles. And Eddie came backstage. So, of course, it's in Los Angeles, and people are going to be coming up to Eddie because of who Eddie is, but it's his hometown, too. So you have this extra layer of, I don't know, friends, acquaintances, anybody that's going to be taking up his time.
Sure.
And William knew that. So he just said, it definitely was an Alice in Chains show, because he walked up and he said, hey, and then he kind of gave him space. But right at that time, William had just had a son who was really young. I think he was just a couple years old, or if that. And he was backstage too. And Eddie spent the entire time backstage doting on William's kid, just playing with him, asking William a ton of questions about him. And to me, that really showed the human side of Eddie. I mean, we all know how dedicated he is, or he was, to his own son, to Wolfgang. But it kind of spread to, like, extended to other kids, obviously. He was just as a human, he was a good person. I'm sure he had a million people coming up to him, and he was like, yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you in a minute, guy from Kicks. But I want to play with this kid over here for a second. I mean, and it showed me a lot about Eddie.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's he said that's how he wanted to be remembered, as just a nice guy. And I think that, anybody who's ever gotten to be in his presence and stuff like that, he was just I was lucky enough to be around him, and he was just a pleasant, for such a big rock star. He just seemed like an unassuming, just a regular, guy like we're just talking like now. So it's kind of cool, that there was no real star trip or anything like that around him, so. But and I think people will remember him as a nice guy, a genius, but a tortured genius, but a nice guy. So getting back to the book a little bit. So now, do you delve into the whole the Ray Daniels thing or any of that type of stuff, that era? Do you cover all? I'm sure you have to touch on that kind of stuff, right?
You have to, and that's one of the reasons why I interviewed Sass Jordan, because I said, "What how did you end up with Van Halen?" And look, I hate when guys with books come on and like, "Well, read the book, and then you'll find all out about it." But I asked Sass Jordan, I'm like, "How did you end up in that picture?" I mean, she had some records that they weren't really that popular in the States. I mean, they got some traction, but where the hell did they find her?
Yeah, exactly.
We know where they found Patti Smythe. I mean, back in the 80s, Scandal was huge. Sure. Warrior was huge. Goodbye to You was huge. But where did they find Sass Jordan? And she let me know it was because Ray Daniels was Canadian, as well as she was, and they knew some of the same people. And I got in depth with her about that. So it was a lot of finding out where people came from in that era. Mitch Malloy has already done his thing. Like, we know he did his big Rolling Stone article about how he was in the band, out of the band.
Did you talk to him? Did you talk to him?
I didn't talk to Mitch because I felt like he said everything he had to say in that Rolling Stone article.
Yeah, I didn't read the Rolling Stone article. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy and everything like that, but he just kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's just like
I feel the same way, John. I feel like he kind of put the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, whatever the saying is. This is one of those weird things where I believe Ray Daniels, where he said, we never offered the job to Mitch Malloy.
Right.
I totally believe Eddie walking in being like, "You're my soulmate,"
100%. I agree with you. I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Totally.
Right.
But for Eddie to say, or for Mitch to say, I was in the band and I faxed him a letter to say I'm not in the band. Okay, that's fine. And I did want to talk to Mitch about that. That's why I didn't. But I wanted to talk to Sass, and I wanted to talk. I had talked to Gary, which again, this is some of the unpublished stuff that's never been put out there before, about how he was set up for being in Van Halen. And one of the great things that he told me showed me that side of Eddie that we just talked about, where he said after that MTV Awards appearance, Eddie called him right away and said, you don't have anything to worry about. You're in the band. This was just an aberration.
Right.
Fuck Dave, fuck this, fuck that, fuck the record label. You're in the band. And he said it was like a protective thing. And to me, it was not just about, oh, well, you're screwing over Dave and you're trying to do this whole thing. It's you're being a caring person to another individual, which was Gary Sharon, which at the end of the day, these are human. I'm not going to say that. These are humans.
There you go.
These are humans. They are people who have feelings and when Mitch Malloy says he saw David Lee Roth walk out with Van Halen, I believe that 100%. But when Gary sees it and he's living in Eddie's guest cottage, that's got to suck. So to have Eddie call him right away and say, forget about all that. You're in the band. You're the guy I want to write with. That means a lot. And it shows a lot about Eddie, more than anything else.
And it also validates what I was kind of talking about before, is like, I really don't think Eddie wanted Dave back in at all. You know what I mean? I think his leash was even shorter, or Eddie's fuse was even shorter with Dave because he didn't really want him back in there. And then that night, I didn't think it took too much to get Eddie completely pissed off, and as we know, that's exactly what happened, because I don't think he really wanted any part of it,
I really don't think Eddie, in his mindset, I don't think Eddie thought that the MTV Awards were going to be as a big a deal as it turned out to be. And you read it in Dave's book where Dave says, all we're doing, on the limo ride over there, Dave says, all we're doing is we're going to talk about these 2 new songs and that's it. And Dave goes, everybody's going to want to talk about everything but those 2 new songs. They want to know why Sammy's out, why I'm back in, why people are reporting Gary is back in. Because literally that day, the Boston Herald reported that Gary was trying out for Van Halen. So all the press was like, well, why is this happening? Why are you saying Dave's in the band, but he's really not? I mean, it was a really weird situation happening that could never happen today.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I would have loved to have heard that second album with Gary, and like we were always talking about it with a real producer. It would have been nice to have heard what would have been next, and like Gary always said, it would have been nice if they did the tour first and then recorded the album, because then maybe people would have accepted him more. I think he was at a disadvantage because of the whole bait and switch with Dave at the awards, and then Dave gone again, and then him there. I just, it was
one of the things that Greg Renoff brought up was, and Greg's a fan just like I am. Before anything else, he's like, what killed Gary's era in the band was, all right, we thought we're getting Dave back, and now we're not getting Dave back, and we're not getting Sammy back. We're getting this guy from Extreme, which 90% of the people know as the More Than Words guy. Which I also, there's a whole thing in the book where Gary's telling me, he's like, I would go to towns in like Kansas, and the radio announcers are saying, so next week we're going to have Van Halen in town, and we're going to interview him on the station. And they got the More Than Words guy, Gary Sharon, with them. And it's like, man, it's like they were so much not about that song.
Yeah, it's true. I had people giving me the CD that I'm a huge Extreme fan, but they were like giving it to me. They were like, oh my gosh, I bought the CD for that one song. And the rest of it is just it's horrible, this stuff. I was like, no, that's the good stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But people,
the MTV stuff, I think that went south like it did because the conflict between Dave and Ed got leaked, and that's what you ended up hearing.
Yeah.
I think it was so uncomfortable watching that. Now, I look back now. I mean, I have two friends of mine that are hardcore Van Halen fans. I mean, these guys like bought some white overalls and painted them black and white, or black and white and red, and wore them to a show. And I had nothing to do with that. I was like, I can't go that far because you smell like paint. And we were watching that together, that MTV Awards, and we were so excited. But it kind of felt like, man, something's off here. Like Eddie seems really not excited about this. He doesn't seem into it.
You can tell.
You know, I mean, everybody else seems into it, but Eddie kind of seems. And I would love for one day all the press footage be released from backstage where everybody's answering all the questions. I mean, not to see Eddie say, you know, you better be wearing a cup or any of that, but
it was a train. It was a train wreck.
It was such a mess, you know.
It should have never happened. I can see the couple songs on the greatest hits, but that should have just never happened.
But here, I think Alex said, all we did, or maybe it was in that press release that came out, Alex said, we do what we always do with a new album. We come out to promote it. It's like, yeah, but you don't. Like, if you were promoting the Best of Volume 1, then walk out there with Dave and Sammy, because they both have new songs on that record. Or, I don't know, it was a rough time to be a Van Halen fan.
It was a lot of Dave. What was he thinking? We got a great tour out of it. I mean, set list wise. I mean, the set list with Gary were absolutely incredible. And we're never going to see that again. We'd never get that with Sammy. Never get it with Dave.
No, you're absolutely right. I saw them at the premiere party for that, and
Billboard Live.
Yeah, I was at that, and man, we didn't expect it. We had no idea. I could tell, when we got we get the meet and greet, and we did photo. The band Warner Brothers had a photographer. It was kind of cool there, and Eddie looked he looked tense. He seemed very tense, and we didn't know why. And I mean, he wasn't in bed, but you could just see he seemed a little bit uptight. And then they did the interview, and we didn't even know. And then they dropped the curtain, and the band's equipment was all after the radio broadcast was there. And then they played like 10 songs, but it was all. I don't remember them playing any Sammy songs, but they played all.
Did like Feel Your Love Tonight?
Exactly. They did a bunch of Dave classics, and obviously we all went crazy because we didn't expect that at all. But that's what was great about Gary. But he was just willing to do all that stuff. So
now were any of you guys at the time on the Van Halen mailing list?
Yeah, I was
backstage during that tour.
Yeah, I was there for that, and that was the most accessible they've ever were at that tour. I mean, it was just like we used to chat with Valerie Bertinelli. I remember when Dave was there at the house, and Valerie saying to us,
Gary who?
Yeah, right. And and Dave she's like, you're never gonna guess who's sitting right next to me in Wolfgang's timeout chair, and it was Dave. It was Dave. You know, it was like, wow. So we were like privy to all of this stuff. She would tell us, you know, or she would tell us the song titles as they were recording it. And, you know, Ed was really, I just remember that time. He was really, really excited about that record. You know what I mean? And you could tell from her.
It was so exciting to be a fan at that point.
Yeah, it was.
I was in college then, and I'm in like the Van Halen mailing list on this weird college server. And
yeah, exactly.
It was wild. And, you know, looking back though on that tour, if for people who don't know, anybody who was on the Van Halen mailing list, they invited backstage. So whenever the show came to your city, if you were on the Van Halen mailing list, you got to go backstage and meet the band. And it was a cattle call. I mean, that's how a lot of things are backstage. It's a cattle call. And it was part of them. They really wanted to reach out to fans and media at the time because they're the ones who would influence the nay or yay sayers the most.
And on top of that, they gave us free tickets to the show. I sat in like the friends and family section. I had Mike Post, the producer, sitting right in front of me with his family at Madison Square Garden. It was like, and I still have an email from Valerie somewhere where I said, "Are you going to be at the Garden tonight?" And she emailed me back, and she's like, "Yeah, I have to pick Wolfie up at school at 3. Then I have to go to LAX and JFK. I probably won't get there till 10. Maybe I'll see you." And it was like wild.
It's crazy. It's like the infinity of the internet, where it's like, wow, you know, you had Valerie's AOL address or whatever.
Yeah, you know? Her email was at the time was Yoko at like earthlink.net or something like that. It was like Yoko. Nice. It was like Yoko. Yeah. We called her Yoko on there. That was her nickname.
Like Yoko 5150.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was
great.
But they were so accessible. It was amazing how great they were to us.
So one of the things I posit in my book is, were they accessible because they really needed to be, or because they wanted to be? Because when they came back with Sammy in 2004, they were completely inaccessible.
Right.
And if you wanted to get that close as you were, John, or as I were, because I was on the Van Halen list.
You were going to pay for it.
I think it was $375 to be in the Golden Ring. Right. You know, it's like,
that's Irving Azoff right there.
That's when he took over and made it. And one of the things I put in the book is, it's not like Van Halen were the first ones to do that. They weren't the first ones to say, hey, you got to pay to get backstage and you got to pay to be photographed with us or to see a sound check. They jumped on that train, which if you want to make money, you're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was that could have been Ray Daniels behind that whole thing saying, look, guys, this is what you got to have to do. You know what I mean? You're going to have to start like a grassroots thing, you know, with Gary. But I'm very grateful for that time because, like I said, I met them a bunch of times during that era, and it was just, you know, it was awesome.
We got to shake hands with Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, I squeezed his hand so hard. I got a picture of it. I think he was a little pissed. He's like holding his. You guys see the picture, you know. And that was the night at the Billboard Live thing too. So he had to go play a little while later, which I didn't know at the time. And I gave him the kung fu grip on the thing, and it's in the picture. You can see it. So, but
amazing.
It was something that I never would have expected them to be that accessible. And
we got some incredible set lists, like I said, from that. I mean, that tour.
Yeah.
Again, I wish that would have been the kitchen sink tour.
Yeah, you're right.
You know.
You know, Gary Sharon is just a great guy. I mean, I was a big Extreme fan when they played in the clubs and stuff like that too. And he was just always just a nicest guy ever. He really is. So I was happy when Gary got the gig with them because I knew that's the way he was. And he doesn't. I'm sure when the stuff that you have with him in there, he tells it like it is. He doesn't try to, you know.
He does not. He does not. Like when I talked about Hemeni Say I mean, he said, "I'll take the hit for that."
Yeah.
Like I was the one who encouraged Eddie to do it. Like it was not. It's not like Eddie said, "Oh, I got to sing on this album." It's like I'll take the hit. I pushed him to do that. But
And we're glad he did at this point, because even if you don't like, hey, you know, the singing and stuff like that, but look at the piano playing on there too. When do we ever get to hear Eddie play like a little bit unleashed piano like he did on that song? You know, I don't know if you know. I never was found out for sure. You know, there's some cellos in there. I don't know if Eddie's actually playing the cello or if they're on like a synthesizer.
No, I think he said in an interview that just showed up on YouTube that he played the cello on something.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, their Dreams and Love Walks In and things like that, those were pretty, you know, controlled keyboard songs. But on there, he was just like banging it out on the piano. You could just tell it was probably in the 3 o'clock in the morning, one of those things where they just let the tape roll and he was playing. And
here's a question though for you, John, and for everybody else actually. Was there a part of you that thought the Gary thing was going to work? I mean, did you think it was actually going to work and reach the height of Sammy?
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
not a chance. Snowball's chance in hell.
No, I thought I didn't think it would reach the height of Sammy, but I thought it would do well enough. I thought the album would have went like platinum, and I thought there would have been another album, you know, or a couple albums. And then I figured at that point we would have been in the early 2000s, and obviously we know Ed had cancer by then, and you know everything else is going on. But I did think it would have lasted more than one album, and you know, obviously other things played into that besides just the failure of the first album. Ed was, you know, obviously getting into addiction issues again and stuff, you know, back with heavier duty and stuff like that. And then the cancer came. And so I think it just snowballed from there. But I did think that there would have been, the first album would have been more successful. And I thought there would have been a second album. But I always go back to the problem is that they needed a real producer, not Eddie's golf buddy. And listen, Mike Post, my favorite TV theme song of all time is The Rockford Files. And he wrote that, you know what I mean? So it's just like.
My favorite theme song is The Greatest American Hero.
Yeah,
oh, that's a good one.
Nice.
Yeah, so,
I
you know,
every Sunday before I was forced to go to church.
So
he produced it and co-wrote that song.
Yeah.
Greatest American Hero.
Crazy, it's such a great show.
Yeah. Michael, though, on that with Gary, though, I look at it. If Van Halen were a younger band at the time and had only a couple albums and one singer, and that happened just like it did, it might have worked. But with the history there and the imprint in music for as many years,
he had such big shoes to fill.
There was no way.
I feel like if the difference with Gary coming in than with Sammy coming in was Sammy had this huge hit with I Can't Drive 55, and it was a rock and roll song. Gary's hit was this ballad song, black and white video, him sitting around with Nunu Betancourt hitting you with the guitar.
Yeah, true, too. But to his credit, I think a lot of us knew their music other than that song, though, then.
But did the mainstream know it is the question. I don't think people knew Get the Funk Out. I don't think they... Extreme 3 is one of my... Which is crazy the way it's titled. But Extreme 3 is one of the greatest records that band has done. And I wish people had known that record before Gary joined Van Halen. But they didn't. I mean, the mainstream didn't. Us hardcore fans did, but nobody else did, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I just think it was, you know, we talked about guys like Prince and stuff. They could do whatever they wanted and they got away with it. But I think Van Halen was just, Eddie was just, he was locked in a box, and fans, Van Halen fans most Van Halen fans, I think, would want Unchained Part 2, Unchained Part 3, Unchained Part. They wouldn't mind buying the same album over and over again. And I think that wasn't who he was. Obviously,
they don't want Primary. They don't want Bow to the Bullet.
No,
you know, they don't want. They get stuff like Fire in the Hole, and it's like, okay, you're right there, but they want a whole album of that.
Exactly, and you know what? It's a shame because I throw that, like I said, I throw Van Halen 3 on sometimes, and I'm just like, I listen to there's parts of songs that I'm like, man, like that song Josephina. There's a break in the middle where before it kind of builds up. The hair on my arm always goes up when that acoustic guitar, and that solo part.
I talk about that a little bit in the book, and Gary talks about it in the book, where that might be my favorite song on the record, Josephina, where it's like that's where they kind of moved into maturity that the fans weren't kind of ready for, or probably still aren't ready for. I mean, they still want Unchained, but if you want to get something that's new,
Haas, what's up, dude?
Move forward. Josephine is the song. I mean, that song is incredible.
It really is.
Melody. Really strong melody.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I like my mom's name.
Sing it. So. I mean, you can sing it.
Oh, there you go.
That's you can play. You could pare it down, play it on an acoustic guitar, and you can hum it. You can hum the melody. To me, it's memorable.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I just think that there's so many little gems and parts of songs that are just like, like, wow, if you sit back and just put the headphones on and listen to that record, I mean, I think, maybe over time people will give it another chance, the hardcore fans, because we don't have anything else to listen to anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they may say
become one of those things that'll get rediscovered. And I mean, look, nobody's ever going to put How Many Say I or Year to the Day on a top 10 Van Halen list.
Right.
But if you can at least rediscover what Eddie was doing on piano, on How Many Say I, or, I mean, Year to the Day, I kind of even slag it in my book a little bit where I'm like, no Van Halen song should be that long, like 8 minutes long.
Right.
It just goes on way too long. But there's some good points to it. And there's so many good points on that record. Like there's so many good little elements on Van Halen 3.
Now, I think A Year to the Day, wasn't that a song that they actually did with Sammy? Wasn't that other song, the Closer to You or something like that?
No, that was Once.
That was Once?
So I actually talked to Sammy about that. And he made Once into Come Closer.
Okay.
And I put that in the book. But, I mean, whatever. I think
the hook in Once is really good.
But they mentioned a song that was it would have been Sammy kept saying it was the Stairway to Heaven, Van Halen's Stairway to Heaven. I thought that was the music for A Year to the Day. I didn't know if that was what he was talking about. I
think his Stairway to Heaven was Between Us Two.
Yeah. Now, what was that? What was that the music for A Year to the Day though? Between Us Two. I mean, or
not as far as I know. I think Between Us Two never got released.
Really?
He said that was done, but they came back to him and said, come back, finish Between Us Two for the Twister soundtrack, or you're out of the band. And that's what led to the song with Eddie and Alex on Respect the Wind.
Right. It was nice to, to get to see Alex finally play some piano because, a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah. And, everybody,
people think Eddie plays piano on that. It's like, no, it's Alex playing on that.
And Alex can, I always tell people he can sight read music. He can just open up a piece of music and start playing. A lot of people, Eddie couldn't do that. He had to sit and actually figure out the notes as he was playing it because he cheated, because he had such a great ear.
Right.
But Alex could actually open up music and just start playing it on piano, which is pretty wild. You know what I mean? To think of that. So I was glad he got his, a piano of Alex in there too. But
it's so funny that Eddie used to cheat that much and win competitions just by playing by ear.
It's pretty incredible that he had such a great ear.
Really
unbelievable. It makes sense why Eddie's comment in the past. He would say, "Oh, I'll talk to Alan, ask him about arrangements, or if this hook, the melody in this, hook sounds good, or." But I think I even myself forget sometimes how much piano Alex played. I'm like, well, before he was playing any drums, playing the hell out of the piano.
Yeah, that's why he's such a musical drummer, I think, too, because he's a complete musician in that way. It's not just,
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you bring up, John, because he's not just a drummer. He was a classically trained pianist.
Yeah.
He was playing guitar, and then he plays drums.
Played violin.
Yeah, violin.
Yeah. And, I mean, he's all over the place. So that's why I mean, to this day, I'm surprised he plays on Respect the Wind, but it's like, oh, it only makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what a musician does. He plays everything.
absolutely. But one last thing on Van Halen 3, but I already said it, but I think that just the fact that they stretched out on that one, and then the fact that it failed, and then Eddie had to go be back boxed into where what fans expected of him. I kind of think he checked out a little bit. Plus, he was focusing on his health and stuff like that. But I think obviously he checked out a bit because I think that really crushed him. And every band, you name a band, every band comes to a point in apex. Van Halen was lucky; they had their apex probably in 1984, and then they didn't drop off. Like I always mention the Police. Sting knew at Shea Stadium that night on Synchronicity Tour that this was it. He goes, "We're not. It only goes down from here. It doesn't go any higher than this." So I think a lot of people have that realization, and maybe some bands don't. They think it's going to keep going up, but some of them are realists. But Van Halen was lucky because even though they didn't maybe reach the height of 1984, but when Sammy came in, they maintained it, and they had #1 albums for all after that. But every band hits the point where they're not relevant anymore because new kid generations is coming in, and they're struggling to be relevant and in the public conscious to maintain that. U2 is a band that always is struggling to change their sound with the time to try to stay relevant, to ride the wave. And you can't fight it. Eventually, you have to give in and become a nostalgia act like the Stones do. And then you don't record new music anymore. You just live off your catalog. And U2 in the last few years has finally, basically, in my opinion, surrendered to that because now they're going out and performing the Joshua Tree in its entirety and stuff like that. It happens to every band. And I believe that, Van Halen, obviously, it happened to also. But Eddie would always fight it because I think, he didn't want to go out on tour without a new record. That wasn't who he was. He was a musician. He wanted to make new music, and go out. Whereas a lot of people like, Sammy and people like that are like, why am I going to waste a year of my life in a recording studio for an album that, people are just going to give away for free. And I'm not going to make any money off it. What's the point, So, but I think that Eddie had that struggle. And I think that he was just disillusioned and I don't know if I'd say bitter, but just with the fans, he's just like, well, forget it. I'll just make music for myself. And that's probably what I'm assuming he did for the good part of the last 20 years of his life. If he did anything, it's probably him and Alex and all those tapes on the wall in the studio. I just hope that there's some great stuff on there that we eventually get to hear. Any thoughts on that?
What do you think about the 2012 tour then with A Different Kind of Truth? I mean, he played a good amount of songs from that record.
Yeah, I think that's that was Eddie's. He didn't want to tour without new music, and I think he was happy about doing that. I mean, 2015 they had the live album; it was a live album, but I think 2012, I think that played into his thinking with that whole thing, and obviously that album was touch and go the whole time too. It could have. John Shanks makes it sound like they could have pulled the plug on that at any minute. That could have just not happened, that album. So I don't know if you delve into that in the book at all, that album.
No, I do, but I also look at the fact that, I mean, they wanted to tour with something new for 2015. And, Eddie was looking at the old demos, and then he's looking at the club days and the live stuff, and which this is a complete other topic, which really gives me pause about the future, because Eddie said that if the stuff that he was looking at from the club days, they were tweaking so much that they were making them too clean and too pristine that it took away all the heart of it, basically. I don't see that ever coming out.
Yeah.
I don't think, if it didn't work for Eddie, it's not going to work for Wolfgang. It's not going to work for Alex.
Right.
But I mean, I think that to this day, I think that A Different Kind of Truth is so underrated, like completely underrated.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that Tattoo was the worst choice of a single.
I agree.
ever do. Gary told me that they picked it out of a hat. He's like, literally, they picked it out of a hat. What they're gonna do, and they should have picked again.
Yeah.
Because any other song would have been better than Tattoo. It should have been a deep cut. That record would have went to #1 if Chinatown was first single. Honey Baby Sweetie Doll was first single.
Yeah.
Maybe even She's the Woman. Who knows? I don't know. But that record is, and I think I even wrote this in the book, was the first time that any band has ever come back and made a record from like a band from the 70s or 80s, whatever you want to call Van Halen, that stood up to everything that they did before. Dave's voice might not be at 100% like it was then. It was at least at 80% on that record.
You're right.
And lyrics were at 110%.
Yeah, some of his best lyrics ever, I think, were on that album.
I agree with you, John. And I think that Eddie's guitar playing, off the hook. Like, ridiculous how good that guitar playing was.
Yeah.
And I also think that, it was nothing else was out there like that. And the fact that it got bogged down in this narrative that, they just redid demos that were done before. Another thing, and I don't want to be that guy that says I write this in a book, but AC/DC, Aerosmith, they've done the same thing.
Right.
They've done the exact same thing for years, but they didn't have their demos out like Van Halen did. I mean, Van Halen's demos have been floating around for years. Aerosmith's haven't. AC/DC's haven't. And if they are, it's not to the level that Van Halen's are with the Gene Simmons demos or with the Warner Brothers demos. It's not like that.
And it's really nothing that should surprise any of us, because Eddie was still reaching back on balance. I mean, Take Me Back.
Right.
The beginning of that song is from the 70s. I mean, it's on YouTube. You can hear it on. I forget the name of it. I was in shock. I didn't even know that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's that old, that from there. So we always know he was going back and picking out pieces.
Or look at Right Now. I mean, Right Now went back to what, 82?
82, 83, right? Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous. And the funniest part to me was people are like, if they're going to do an album with David Lee Roth, it better sound like classic Van Halen. Well, you're reaching back to what classic Van Halen was all about. Why not embrace that? They're giving you an album that sounds exactly like classic Van Halen.
Yeah.
It sounds just like Van Halen.
And it wasn't a commercial. Really, it wasn't a real commercial album either. It wasn't like there was like these pop singles on it, like Jump or even Panama. Those were like some deeper jamming cuts on that album. It's like, that's the album that people wanted, like a rockin' type of Van Halen album, with not totally commercial. And that's what they got on that album.
Like Trouble with Never. I felt that, John, that a little bit of that intro, the new intro here. I felt a little bit Trouble with Never on there.
That's one of my favorite songs on that album, actually.
Oh, it's such a good song. You can hear the influence on there.
Yeah, definitely. I love that song. I love that. I thought that, to me, that, in my opinion, should have been the first single, that one, because it had a catchy a great chorus, a hook to bring you in. It was that Van Halen-y type of chorus with the background vocals. And, it's just killer between Eddie and Wolfgang playing, the riff, So.
It's funny. I don't know if you guys have listened to the interview that Sammy did. It just got published the other day with Scott Lips. He's a podcaster. And I listened to it last night, and he said something like, it's the old saying, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And I'm like, he just repeated David Lee Roth lyric. I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I was screaming at my little Bluetooth speaker at the time.
Yes. Some great lyrics on that album, but
yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm glad we got it. All this we can thank Wolfgang for, really, when you think about it.
Absolutely. So, and I don't care if it was from 30 years ago or 5 minutes ago. Yeah. We got a great record out of that.
Without a doubt.
Again, some of Dave's lyrics, some of the best. Eddie's guitar playing, not only on that record, but on the next two tours.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
And it's funny because I thought, every tour with Roth, I thought Eddie got better, and I thought 2015, I thought he was the sharpest he'd been out of any of the tours with, since they reunited with Dave. That was my opinion. I thought the band was very sharp in 2015. The background vocals were stellar. I thought Eddie and Wolfgang. You listen to some of the stuff. You go on YouTube, and I'm like, I saw a clip the other day. It was on Instagram. I'm like, oh my God, Eddie and Wolfgang sound phenomenal together, singing the background vocals on there. It was like, I almost felt like it was like, this can't be. This sounds like it was brought back in the studio. They sang so well on there, and I think they really worked at it. I know they worked at it on that for 2015. And
I like the little jokes they had. Like, I think Wolfgang posted something many, many months ago about during Out of Love Again, where there'd be that little break where Alex would do a break and he'd be like, dunk, like he would throw in a little bass thing, and Eddie would always look over at him like just smiling. And it's like, that's why he was there. That's why Eddie was there. He was there to play with his son. He was there to enjoy that time with his son. And that's why we got 7, 8 more years with Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
We don't get that. We don't get that without Wolfgang. And look, I love Michael Anthony. You love Michael Anthony. We all love Michael Anthony. Michael Anthony has never done anybody wrong. But Wolfgang is the reason why we got Eddie Van Halen and Van Halen these past couple years.
That's right. Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. It's true. And also too, Mike Anthony not there missed, of course, but the vocals that Wolfgang brought to Van Halen when he joined that band, great vocals.
Well, now we know they're not piped in, which is what
great
saying at the time.
You
People
can watch the stuff, the sound check stuff. Wolf sounds great.
Yeah, I thought on Different Kind of Truth, I actually thought that the vocals background could have been a little bit louder in the mix. I thought they should have, if you listen to certain songs, I think they could have been brought up a little bit more even, I thought they were really well done. But
do you think that's because they didn't want to have the comparisons to the Michael Anthony vocals?
Yeah. The way I look at that album is that if you really listen to that album, John Shanks and Ross Hogarth, I think from my taste, I think, maybe I would have used a different producer or something like that. But I think that it was the Eddie and Dave show. And I think they knew that, those two guys. So if you listen to that mix, it's like Dave is very loud in the mix and Eddie's very loud in the mix. They all are. Wolfgang's very loud in the mix. I actually think Alex is not as loud in the mix. I always listen for a kick drum, and it should be punching me in the chest. And I think Alex's drums are a little too low in that because I don't feel. I crank it up. I don't feel it. You don't
feel it as is.
No, not like if you put For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge on it, and that album's not it's not even remastered. For Unlawful Carnal. So if you go to the Best of Both Worlds, the Greatest Hits one, and you take any cut off like Pound Cake or something off that was remastered, and you put that on, and you feel that kick drum hitting you in the speakers. But you go to A Different Kind of Truth, and I feel like Alex was in the odd man out. They said, hey, it's the Eddie and Dave reunited album. It's like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. We got to showcase these guys. So they mixed them very, very loud. And I felt like Alex suffered a little bit because of that. And I like a lot of loud drums. My friend actually complained to me today about the theme song. He's like, you and those kick drums, they're like too loud, he said, on the intro song. I go, well, I like them loud. I don't know.
I like them too.
Guys, I gotta go. I gotta put my son to bed. So
Tom, you take care, brother.
It was very nice meeting you, Michael.
Tom, great meeting you. Maybe we hook up.
All right, Tommy.
I look forward to the book.
Be
Have
good,
a
Tom.
great week,
care,
Tom.
All right, gentlemen. Nice seeing everybody.
Yeah, Tom.
See you, bro.
Have a good one. Take care.
So let's go over. Anybody in the chat? You got any good questions here? Kurt, I know you have to have some questions there. So fire away, and we'll pick them up. And Michael will read them over to you here.
All right.
Anybody else?
Here we go.
Get some questions going on in there,
All
and
right.
let's see if we got anything coming up here. I know Kurt's got to have some questions in there. Kurt wrote already. People hate on the fact that Michael wasn't there, but if it wasn't for Wolfgang, we wouldn't have had what we had in the end, which we exactly agree about that.
Who's got a question?
Let's see. Let's go through it. Well, I'm going to give him a minute to type.
I think it was really classy for Michael to come out with a statement before that tour in 2007 where he said, hey, he's not a bad guy. He's a cool kid. Give Wolfie a chance.
There you go.
I mean, that just shows how cool Michael Anthony is.
I don't know if you noticed a few weeks ago on Instagram, Michael Anthony responded to something Wolfgang wrote there too. And they had a little back and forth. You know, they want one little comment to each other, like a very nice little comment. I saved it somewhere. I know I have it on my phone, but I don't know if a lot of people picked up on it. But Michael Anthony did respond to something on Instagram that Wolfgang. Let me see if I can find it. Lenny wanted to know about Catherine and Rise, the porn movie songs. Michael, what do you got about that?
That was really disappointing. I mean, that was the time when I think it was 2006, and people were like, "Okay, so are we getting a new Sammy record?" Because the Sammy tour ended in 2004. Nobody knew what was happening post then, because it's not like it is today where we know everything immediately afterward. And then all of a sudden, Eddie's saying, I love this guy. He's like Spielberg to me. His name is Michael Nin. I'm like, oh, wow. Is he directing an independent movie? No, he does porn movies. And I'm letting him film a couple in my house. And I'm like, oh, man. Now I know why Valerie split out of that house. No. In all seriousness, it was not a good time for Eddie. And I do touch on that slightly in the book because it's part of that story. It's part of the Van Halen story, and it's part of Eddie's story where he thought he was doing something that was musically expressive for him. He didn't want to deal with a singer anymore. He was done with Sammy. Gary had long left the band. He had a botched reunion with Dave in, I think, 2001. So now it was, all right, I'm just going to do my own musical thing, and I'm going to do it with this filmmaker who we met through some other people. Alex wasn't involved. Michael Anthony wasn't involved. It was just a Eddie thing doing a soundtrack. And it was really, really weird. I think for us fans, when we heard about that, we were like, wait, what?
Yeah, I was so disappointed. I'm like, you're Eddie Van Halen and you're doing porn music. I mean, this is how far you've fallen. I was so angry at him during that dark period. I don't even like to see pictures of that era. I don't like.
I think that, John, that was around that time where Eddie had shown up on the red carpet at like an Oscars party, at like Elton John's Oscar party, and he had those boots with the gaffer tape on them, and his toes were sticking out.
Yes.
And it was like, man, what is happening here? And it was sad for us, but for him, it felt like he was doing something that he wanted to do. So I don't know.
But while you're talking about Elton John, he's somebody now I have mad respect for, because when Eddie passed away, Elton John had a real nice tweet about Eddie.
Exactly.
So he gets the thumbs up from me for that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we got a couple questions in there, but I did find the I don't know if you can see, if you can read this. Let's see. But you see, Mad Anthony, rock it out, Wolf. And then basically, I'll do my best, brother, and 3 hearts after it. So
nice.
You know, I think at some point over the next couple of years, I think, because Wolfgang, even on Howard Stern, seemed to want to just smooth things over with Mike and make things right, because I can guarantee you that there's bad blood, which there was between Eddie, unresolved stuff, that.
And it's really sad that they never got to kind of figure that all out.
And I always say, for the Mike not to reach out, knowing that he was that sick, and he had to know that he was that sick, for him not to call up and just say, hey, even if he didn't know if Eddie was going to hang up on him or whatever, but just do it and say, you know what, I did it. I can sleep at night. I reached out to him, and if he didn't want to talk to me, that's fine. But at least I did that. But Mike must have some kind of residual, anger from the way he was treated all those years, that he didn't even want to pick up the phone, I guess, for whatever reason, which is sad, you know.
I mean, he got slapped in the face twice, and I mean, one of the people I talked to in the book, it's again, this is unpublished stuff, but was Noel Monk, who obviously wrote his own book, Running with the Devil.
Right.
But one of the things he was telling me was he didn't understand why it wasn't just Eddie; it was Eddie, Alex, and Dave just beating up on Mike nonstop.
Yeah, they enjoyed it. It's like,
I mean, he was like the kid in the lunchroom. I think he even used that analogy. Like they would just, you know, take his plate and just smash it, you know, filled with food. And when they said that we're going to not only take your royalties from 1984, but we're going to backdate them. I mean, that's brutal. I mean, that's one of the biggest selling albums of all time, and we're going to take it. And Michael Anthony says, "Okay." Right. I mean, you got to stand up for yourself at some point.
No,
and Mike is one of the coolest guys in the world, but
yeah, God, I think that was his problem there. Because a lot was said in in Noel's book about that. He was mistreated. He just on a regular everyday human level too. And
that's, you know what,
they ganged up.
I mean, that's
on
the thing.
somewhat.
It's a human level. It's a human level. It's not even. I don't care about what you're getting. What are you playing on the record? What are you playing? What are you getting in this or that? On a human level, you're getting treated like shit, and it's like you're such a good guy that you're getting treated like that. I just don't get it.
Yeah, you know, in Sammy's book, the one story that sticks with me is that when Alex was going through a divorce and he was broke, and they wanted to cut Mike's his royalties, whatever he was getting at that point, and they had to vote on it. And Alex voted to cut Mike's royalties. Ed voted to cut Mike's share, whatever. Sammy voted no, not to cut Michael's share. And Michael voted yes to cut his own share. That's what kind of guy he was. Right. And Sammy's like, Mike's trying to help you out here. I'm voting not to cut you, and you're voting to help them out. I mean, so it's just like, that's what kind of guy he was. I always, in the back of my mind, thought, you know what? I think maybe there was some kind of resentment towards Mike, because Mike was a happy guy. Mike married his high school sweetheart. You know what I mean? He was always just seemed like a happy guy. And I think those guys may have looked at it and saw, like, you know, look at this guy. He's happy. He's got, you know, I think maybe there was a little, like, you know, I want to say jealousy, but just something like they, you know.
He's got like the white picket fence life.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
You know, he's got everything's happy. It's like, wait, you're not getting divorced. You're not marrying some stripper. Right. Not that anybody else in Van Halen married a stripper or anything. I'm just saying, like, you didn't just embrace the rock star lifestyle. No, I just married my high school girlfriend and just doing my own thing, and that's that. And
right.
He's just such a laid back, cool guy. And to see that turned upside down by some of the bullshit, it's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It sucks.
So going back to the chat here, let's see. Keith had said that, you know, Mike didn't respond to the loss of Eddie's mom, which put him over the tipping point. Well, I think Eddie's mom died in like 2005, and you know, just a few months before, that tour ended very, very badly, where they didn't even say goodbye to any. You know, they all went their separate ways, and they never spoke again after that. I guess Arizona, the last show on that tour.
Yeah, they had that tour, and the tour ended in Tucson, as we all know. That's where Eddie smashed his guitar, and I don't know if anybody wanted to talk to Ed after that tour. And right. I get that that Eugenia passed away, and should Mike have reached out? Of course. And so should Sammy. And I don't know if Sammy did or didn't. I don't know that. I have no idea about that information. But it was a rough time.
Any info on that, Michael?
Which one? The kitchen sink tour?
The kitchen sink tour. Yeah.
The info that I've got on that, which is not in the book, is that Dave had not been approached for doing that tour. And if Dave was, who knows what he would have said. but I know that he was not approached for it.
Interesting.
You know, I had heard, I don't know if you guys had heard this. So I don't, the Rolling Stones, they brought Mick Taylor on tour with them for one tour, but they would only bring him out for
like 2 songs.
Right. And I had heard that that's what Eddie wanted to do with Michael Anthony, which was just bring him out that was one of the ideas that he must have expressed to Irving Azoff, because he didn't really want Mike on it, at all. But I mean, I think he softened towards the end, because everything you hear it was that he was like, yeah, he was looking forward to it. And Sammy even says that, hey, Mike, Eddie said, Mike, hey, Ed, tell Mike I'm thinking about him. I'm asking about, I was asking for him, stuff like that. But I did hear that, and I believed it. You know what I mean? I said, yeah, I could see him being that way, because as far as 2015, I always bring up that Billboard article where Eddie went out of his way. And Eddie was very sober at that point, and he went out of his way. And I think a lot of it was a reaction to the fans not wanting Wolfgang there. And I think Eddie was just, angry at that.
Yeah, Eddie was really, really harsh in that article. He was really, really harsh towards Michael.
Right.
I think if that kitchen sink tour happened, I think Michael would have been playing the whole show. And the reason why he would have been playing the whole show is Wolfgang again.
Yeah, I think
Wolfgang
100%
opened. He would have opened with his band, and he would not want to play any of those Van Halen songs. And I know people want to say, what about this song, that song? No, Wolfgang was at the core of it a big Van Halen fan, and he knew what the fans wanted, which is why we got the set list we got for the past couple tours.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, and maybe all of them come out at the end, all of them, and do a Led Zeppelin song or something.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you 100% of that. And even like I said on Howard Stern, when Howard asked him if his father and Michael Anthony had made up, and he said no, but it was headed in that direction. It was, it would have happened. He said it would have happened, which I do believe it probably would have happened, because, one thing and recent interviews that I've heard is like Tom Weber, the guitar tech, tech for Eddie. And apparently he doesn't really say anything negative, but apparently he had a rough go with Eddie when he was on the tour with him. I think they tried to really kind of blame him for the time where Jump was in the wrong key. The guitars were in the wrong key.
Was that 2007, 2008?
Yeah, I believe it was. And I know Tom explains exactly what happened, and it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. It's on YouTube, you can see it. But apparently, they were furious about that whole thing, and the people involved in putting on the show were too. So they did investigating, and apparently a couple of weeks later, they called Tom into a room, and they tried to pin it on him. And so I don't think he had a real easy go with Ed. I think Ed was probably pretty difficult back then. But I do. I remember him saying that on the 2015 tour, they, Eddie was apparently asking Matt Bruck and I think it was Adam Reaver from FU Tone, who am I going to get for to tech for me on the tour? And I think it might have been Adam that said, call Tom. Well, you should really call Tom Weber. Call Tom Weber. So Eddie said, yeah, I'm going to call him. So apparently called him, and Tom was in an airport somewhere in Dallas or something like that. And he's like, hey, Tom, it's Ed Van Halen. Yeah, how you doing? And Tom was kind of like, whoa, shocked. And he asked him, he's like, would you be interested in teching for me, for the tour? We're going to be going out on tour again. And apparently Ed said to Tom, and he goes, I'm not the asshole that I was last time. I just want basically saying, admitting that he knows that he was not, that he was back to being the Ed that we all hoped that he would.
Is that when he threw the amp? Like he threw the
2007. That was at the Meadowlands. I was at that show.
Rutherford, East Rutherford.
Yeah, he claimed that I guess that his eardrum was punctured. I guess there was some kind of feedback from the mic or something in his monitors or something. But I guess, like I said, I guess he didn't have an easy time, probably Tom, with him. And but the fact that Ed did say to him, "Hey, I'm not that asshole that I was last time." It goes to show you that he was, he's saying, hey, it'll be different this time. And apparently it was different, because Tom also tells a story about Ed hiding behind, they were getting ready for the sound check, and there was a problem with Ed's pedal board. He was like, Tom would, step on the thing, and then the button would switch and like to a different channel on the amp. And Tom started freaking out because the band was going to be there 20 minutes for the sound check. And he kept clicking on like channel, the blue channel or whatever, and it would keep switching by itself to the red channel, and he's freaking out. And he said he turned around to the amp heads, and Ed was hiding behind there, and he was manually clicking the thing to goof on him. So
that's an excellent story.
Which maybe he wouldn't have done a few years earlier. So he was like, I guess the old Ed was back. You know what I mean? So
nice.
Full circle, on that last tour. So.
Hey, what do you guys think about when the band showed up in, I guess it would have been 98 on Howard Stern?
Yeah, that was a bad day. Ed was not himself that day. I can tell you that.
I mean, did they think that they were going to play, or they weren't going to? Like, Eddie was crawling all over the place.
Yeah, he was all over the place, and I saw him play. Yeah, that was just a weird show. I think Ed had begun whatever, I don't know if he was drinking or whatever he was doing. I think he was, because I saw him that night, and I spoke to him that night, and I could tell. I mentioned it to you guys once before. I talked to him for like a minute that night, and I could just tell he was happy. He could be real nice and like laid back, but I could tell he wasn't, there was something going on there.
Really?
I felt.
So John, you're saying you don't think he was sober that night?
Yeah, I don't know if it was sober from drinking, or I don't know if he, what it was, but he just was not. He was off. He was not normal. You know what I mean?
To me, I thought, and again, I wasn't there like you were right afterward, but to me, I thought, here he is showing up on this show that has dogged him so much in the past,
right?
Where the host has, and I love Stern. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about Stern, but I love Stern. But he's made friends with David Lee Roth. He's made friends with Sammy Hagar. And now he's having Eddie on for the first time after dogging him for years. Eddie's got to feel really insecure. Like, he's got to be like, all right, am I walking in to get assaulted? Like, am I going to be, this is going to be a shit show. I walk in this door, it's going to be open season on me. Yeah, and maybe that was his kind of default security, being like, all right, I'm just going to play with my guitar. I'm going to do this, do that. Yeah. As weird as it looked.
I always wanted to ask Dave Nesdahl about that, because he was with him that day too. I guess because I think Dave worked at Manny's, and Ed needed some amps for the Stern show and stuff like that. So I never spoke to Dave about that, but I felt that night that he was not, not normal. Something was up there. I will ask Dave that though. I definitely will.
You'll get the chance. And if you pause right there on that thought, I'll show you something. In 2 weeks, right here on October the 6th, on the day that
the book is released,
this book is coming out. We on the show are going to have Mr. Dave Nesdahl himself, right?
There you go. Cannot wait.
Yep. And absolutely. Your teaser.
There you go. 7/8 says Stern used to be the greatest. He's a sellout now. Turned into everything he used to hate. I am 110% with you on that.
I am too. Yeah. I'm actually amazed that Eddie actually showed up on the Stern show with the interview that you were just talking about, because if
me too,
it was me, I wouldn't have given him the time of day.
Lenny's right in the chat here. She said Eddie told Stern not to talk about his wife or his kid. And he did. But, the weird thing is, after that, when Eddie went through that dark period, he was calling Howard Stern at home.
2006.
Yeah, exactly. He would call.
I heard that.
Night. And I was always concerned, because I thought, Stern would loves to exploit people and things like that. To his credit, I think Stern could have said a lot more things about Eddie being out of his mind back then, but he didn't. But I didn't trust him. I thought he was going to, make a joke out of it, you know, or
I
something.
think I think around 2006, John, that's when he started maturing.
Right.
At Stern, I'm talking about.
Right.
And I mean, look, Eddie called up saying, oh man, he cured his cancer and he had gone through this weird doctor and this and that. And Stern just kind of led him along, but he didn't push him and make him look like an idiot, which he could have done, which I think he did in '98 when they came on. And he's like, Eddie, what are you doing back there? You're crawling around, you're doing this, doing that. And he kind of made him look like a fool because that show ended up on the E channel.
Right.
And all you saw on that E channel show was Eddie crawling around. They didn't play on that show.
Yeah.
You know, it was just Van Halen talking. But
and he plugged into the amp and he would just do stuff on the amp, and then he was all over the place. That it was just,
and it made him kind of look like a fool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. I think he could have went farther a few years later when Ed was calling him in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? You know.
There you go, Michael.
But you know, so
our boy Kurt says
Kurt 5150. We talked about this earlier. Weren't you here earlier?
Yeah, I don't think Kurt was here at that point. Yeah, Kurt. It was pushed back to the 6th, but for a good reason though. Not what you think. Is because basically the first printing was sold out, so they're scrambling to get some more books printed up. So they pushed the whole thing back a few days.
Yeah, and they've really. I truly don't think the people in the publishing house know the significance of October 6th.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, they moved it back a couple days because the first printing sold out, which I'm super excited about. But I'm bummed that people aren't going to get it on the first like they wanted.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Let's show it again.
Nice.
There it is. Can't wait to get it. Links are down below, kids.
Such a great cover. Such a great title.
Order yours today.
Excellent cover.
Yes.
So, Michael, is there anything that in the book that we should know that you know? Obviously, we haven't seen it yet, but is there anything that we're covering certain points of it? I'm focusing more on the later points of it because, like you said, the earlier points we kind of know about the Eddie playing the drums and Alex playing that kind of stuff. So I wanted to go a little more because it seems like the last 20 years, the lost years in a way, where there was kind of a communication blackout, really from them, where Eddie used to be so open and honest about everything from his cancer and everything. That really changed, after 2000. And then even when Janie came into the picture, she controlled things, which, she did a great job as far as that. She protected him. And I do believe that she was a huge reason that he recovered, from the alcoholism and things like that, because she was, on top of everything and really helped him, save him as far as that, along with Wolf and Matt Bruck and his brother, I'm sure too. But so I kind of focused a lot on that tonight, that part of, the later years as far as that. But is there anything else that, that we should know about the book that we didn't even touch on?
Well, it's interesting because around that time, around when Janie had gotten everything back together with Eddie and Wolfie especially, there was a lot that I was discovering where Eddie had not gotten completely sober, but was still trying to make it back with Dave and with Wolfie. I think the biggest thing was, if everybody remembers the Rolling Stone photo that came out, Dan Halen are back together, and it had Dave in that yellow blazer and Wolfgang there, and Eddie had the striped hat. That whole photo shoot turned into a disaster because Eddie was trashed, and Wolfgang came home and he was like, told Valerie, I'm done. I'm not doing the tour. I can't do this. This is ridiculous. I can't do a tour when Dad's fucked up. And Alex said, I'm not going on tour if Eddie's going to be drinking.
Yeah, he had just been through it a few years earlier, right? And he didn't want to go, right?
So it was a whole thing where they did not want to go through all that again. That's kind of well known. But I don't want to dig into that too much. One of the things in the book that I found out that they kind of blew my mind, and I'll tell you this because it's in the book, but I'll give you one example. You remember when the Fuck album came out and there was that chalkboard?
Yeah.
That had like all the phone numbers on it.
Right.
Mhm.
So all the phone numbers were on this chalkboard on the first pressing of the Fuck album.
Uh-huh.
And fans being fans, especially us Van Halen fans, we start dialing up the numbers. Well, a lot of times you're looking at the CD of it, and it's like, is that a 6 or is that a 4? Whatever. So they got the numbers wrong, and they read it wrong. And there was one family, and again, it's in the book, but I think they were from Tulsa, and they went to the police or the media, and they were like, to complain. They were like, we don't know this Van Halen. They're calling us up saying, where's Eddie? We don't know, where's Eddie? But so they go, so that obviously on the newscast, it says their name and everything, like Jenny Jones from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So people start looking them up in the phone book. And not only did the calls increase, but the fans started showing up at their house. They started spray painting Van Halen stuff on their sidewalk.
Wow.
Then they started spraying it on their car. Then they started slashing their tires.
Oh my gosh.
Then their garage got firebombed.
Oh my
Wow.
God. That's not.
Ultimately, they had to move, and they had to sue Van Halen for damages.
Wow.
Well, they know who Van Halen was after that.
Wow.
And it was the wrong number.
Wow.
It was the wrong number. And one of the guys came out who said it was his number. It was one of the guitar techs or something at the time. They're like, oh, they read a 4 that should have been a 6. It's like, holy shit.
Wow.
And that was one of the things I read when I'm like, I can't believe this.
That's crazy. That is
That's
crazy.
funny.
That's
That
crazy.
is
That poor
hilarious.
family, though. I mean, they had to move. They were in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's not like they were in Los Angeles. They were in Tulsa.
Whether it's
Wow.
Eddie Van Halen or whoever else, imagine getting numerous calls every day. Hey,
Yeah.
is this Eddie? Are you Eddie? Can I speak to Eddie?
Keith's right. Keith says in the chat, we are a rabid bunch.
Yes.
So, hey, so here's a little thing I wanted to mention too. It's just kind of funny when you think about this. I was thinking about this earlier that Eddie playing on Beat It basically gave Michael Jackson's album, a shot in the arm to stay at number 1, which basically blocked 1984 from hitting number 1 in the charts. That's a lot of people say that's the reason, because when Beat It came out as a single, it propelled the album sales even higher. And then by the time 1984 came out, they couldn't surpass Thriller at that time. And a lot of people blame Eddie for that, and then, so obviously David Lee Roth never had a number 1 album in his life. And that was the closest he would have got until A Different Kind of Truth. But we know Adele's album came out that week too. So it blocked him. So when you think back, Dave could actually blame Ed for doing Beat It and for him not ever having a number 1 album. And, so,
Well,
I'm sure back then Ed would have had some kind of perverse joy in that, the fact that he blocked Dave from having another number 1 album,
Michael Jackson at that time, he was knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
It was good when it happened, but I don't think Mike needed Ed's help.
Yeah.
Mike was killing it.
I agree, but I think that song was a crossover thing, because I wouldn't have bought Thriller if that wasn't on. I mean, yeah, I hear Billie Jean and everything like that, but I was a rock and roll guy. I wasn't going to buy that album. But
I wasn't going to buy it either way.
Yeah,
I love the song and I
Yeah.
love the solo.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people, a lot of rock guys did buy it. And that's why Quincy Jones wanted Eddie, because he wanted that crossover audience.
I think it had an impact, but at the time while it was happening, not a huge impact. Michael was
And he was the king of pop.
He was
the king of pop.
Brother.
He was the biggest thing.
Van Halen, it was different, but it was cool. But Mike didn't need.
But you have to remember that album came out in like the fall of '82, or I think, Thriller. And we're talking about January '84, that it was still up there hanging on the charts. It's most album, their cycle is over long before then. But
I don't want to give away anything, but I'll tell you what. A lot of people have pointed to Thriller as the reason why 1984 didn't reach the pole position. And Eddie even said it. I think he did an interview with CNN a couple years ago. I think it was in 2012. And he said the reason why 1984 didn't hit number one was because Michael Jackson's hair caught on fire in that Pepsi video. But I break it down in the book. And the actual reason why it didn't figure out into number one was because Footloose jumped over Michael Jackson's Thriller and became number one, while Van Halen was in number 2 and number 3 and then number 4, and then it went back to number 2, and that's why it never hit number one. And the weirdest part is Footloose has the Sammy Hagar song on it.
Oh, so we can blame him. Dave can blame him.
Oh,
you always blame Sammy Hagar.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's great.
Nice.
And you got to again dig into the book. I'm telling you.
Yeah, dude.
That's awesome. That's
great. Rich right there.
So Michael, we're expecting a lot of cool little nuggets like that in the book.
Absolutely, man. I'm going to provide quite a few of them.
Yeah,
excellent.
So, listen, I've had a great time talking to you tonight here about the book. I can't wait to read the book when it comes out. Everybody get out there and pre-order this book. Let's make it a hit. And like Michael says, everybody says that's writing books, they want to keep Eddie alive in the public consciousness out there, that that people know who he is, and and the way to do that is by let's keep his memory alive by buying books like this and reading books and things like that. That's what we can do, to help that, and I really enjoyed talking about this, and I really can't wait to read the book, Michael. It sounds like it's going to be great.
Thank you, guys.
You know your stuff, Michael.
Yeah,
you know your stuff, brother.
Yeah.
So let's show this once more. October the 6th, it is out. The links are down below in the description. Amazon, Van Halen store, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. Yeah.
Love it.
Michael, this has been such a treat.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Michael.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Analog, John, you guys, I love watching this every week. So excited to be the first one on the Wednesday night, and this is amazing. Look, I'll talk Van Halen anytime you guys want to talk Van Halen.
Yeah, you'll have to come back again. So after the book is out, we got to have you back on, and we'll do a follow up on this too, and we'll be pulling for you, and we'll be keeping an eye out. So keep in touch with us too about the book, and we'll talk it up. We're going to keep talking it up, especially after we get to read the book too. So we're going to be more excited when we get to see it in a couple weeks. So
I hope it ships quickly.
It needs to ship quick.
You and me both.
Yes, we hope it ships quickly before we say goodbye next Wednesday. So we are parked in our new day and new time. Wednesday, each week, 9 p.m. Eastern. But next week on the show, me and Charles Green and Ty Price will be in Raleigh live at the Guns N' Roses Mammoth WVH show.
Cannot wait.
At
Recording live.
5 p.m. Eastern,
Cannot wait.
live stream time, 5 Eastern next Wednesday before that show.
That's going to be a
Right.
show.
It's going to be killer. Absolutely killer.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. So
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, man.
Michael,
Guys, thank
everybody,
you.
Michael Christopher.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Everybody go get the book. Links are down below. Van Halen, the Eruption, and the Aftershock.
And if anybody wants to reach out to me, feel free. Just shoot me a message. I've got we already talked about the Instagram, but you can go to my website, thechroniclesofmc.com. Whatever.
That
Hate me,
website
love me,
is
let's do it.
that website is down with those links, Michael.
All
Yeah.
righty.
It's
Michael,
already there.
So keep in touch with us too, and let us know how
Yes.
everything's going with the book. And like I said, we're gonna talk it up. We're gonna continue to talk it up, and definitely want you to have you back on again.
Yeah, Michael, after we read it, that's when we really need to talk about it.
It's
So,
going to be a whole new can of worms.
absolutely.
Exactly.
And speaking about a
Absolutely.
whole new can of worms, that intro tonight, that new intro is a whole new can of worms.
We love
Yeah.
it. We love it.
I mean, if people haven't seen that, they got to scroll back to see what John did with that intro.
We're going to play it again. We're
Yeah.
going to play it again. Thank you, John Conklin.
You know what? I had that thing in my head. I swear to God.
And thank you,
25
Sandra
years.
Picorni, for
Wow.
that. great
25
video.
years. That's how long I've had that thing
Really?
rattling in my head.
Wow.
That riff is in my head. So I swear it was like 1996 or something. I've had that thing in my head. I said, it sounds too much like Van Halen. I can't do anything with that. And then when this came up, I was like, I got something right here for that. You know,
right there, man.
yeah. The only thing I
Nice.
changed was I wanted to put a little solo over it, so I did that tapping part. But everything else is exactly that was in my empty head for the last
There you go.
25 years.
Well,
Cool.
it sounded perfect. It did not sound like a Crosby, Stills, Nash lick or anything.
That's good. That's good.
Vintage.
Excellent.
The kick
All
drums
right,
are
guys.
a little too loud, though, right?
No,
Love
it's
talking to you
great.
guys, all
Love
right?
it.
Yeah, Michael.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Right there,
Thank
brother.
you.
everybody.
Thank you again,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Michael
bro.
Christopher. All right, guys and gals, thanks for being here. This has been fun.
Love you guys.
We'll see you right back here Wednesday for the Mammoth Guns N' Roses show, 5 p.m. start time, with me and this guy over here and Ty Price. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to go live right before that show. Yeah. So,
Can't wait. Can't
yeah.
wait.
All right, everybody, have a great week. We'll see you right back here next Wednesday, Halenville Live. Any last words there, Chuck?
Hey, guys, it doesn't matter if you go north, south, east, or west. In Halenville, all roads lead to Van Halen. You guys have a great night. Be well and rock on.
Right on.